Hello friends, my name is Popeye. Today we're playing some Higurashi, Chapter 7, Minagoroshi. Normally we play this game on Fridays, but because I've been missing so many Fridays, I decided to move this to Wednesday. I'll get to that question in just a second, Samuses, but you are correct and very observant. Hats off to you. So before we get into this, if you are someone who's normally here during the Trails of Cold Steel, we'll still be playing that. Just not this week, obviously. And I also wanted to say, if you were normally here for that, this game is a little bit different. It's a Japanese visual novel, but most importantly, it has some pretty mature content. So here's some trigger warnings that are part of this game. And if any of that's not for you, please, by all means, find some place that is more comfortable for you this evening. This game series has themes such as rape, murder, torture, death, dismemberment, blood, gore, child abuse, suicide, body horror, any of those things against a minor. And in particular, without, well, spoilers, I guess, in particular, we're going to be delving a lot into child abuse with some very realistic depictions of what that looks like. So, where did we end up last time on this? Because it's been a week and a half since we touched this. Everything's looking good. We've avoided all the bad endings we've reached in all the other games. The dude from Chapter 4, which is the one when Rika is like a small girl and none of the others are there. The dude, the police officer who's there, came back, remembered her, ended up saving his wife from dying, and came back on holiday. So we'd avoided all the bad endings except for bad ending number 3, which is the one where Satoko's uncle comes back and without going into too much spoiler territory, they try and get Satoko away from her uncle who is abusing her. Don't have much luck, and they end up murdering him, which obviously is not a great ending. So where we just finished off was basically Rika was looking for Satoko, who was going out for groceries. It was really late, didn't come back. And she's like, where is she? But in the back of her head, she's like, I know where she is. I just don't want to believe it. Eventually goes to Satoko and her uncle's house, sees that she's there, and that she's already reverted to the like protection from her abuser phase, where she kind of like pretends everything's okay, but she's like got this emotional barrier between her and everyone. Rika then goes to the doctor and nurse and says, like, I know I asked you to have those guards help me, and I've seen them in action, but Satoko is in danger. I want you to take the guards off me and just go and kill her uncle, like right now. Like literally go and kill her uncle. Because it's not going to end well. So that's where we are. So what you're probably going to see and hear on the stream, possible murder, possible uncle murder, yay. But also themes of child abuse. Again, I know this is not for everyone. So yeah, this is your last warning. We're going to be diving into that soon. But before that, to answer Samus's question, yes, this is a different background. My wife and I rearranged our office, so my desk used to be kind of behind the camera and a bit to the right over there, against the wall, and I turned it so it's like this, pulled it back, and we kind of our desks went like this. But where's the piano, you ask? Well, I'm glad you've asked that, because I have a separate camera now, because there's not really enough room behind me to do juggling, because the wall's right here. There's not much room. So what I've done is I've set up a second camera where, here, let me waltz on over to it. Oh, hello there. So I've got a second camera. Sure, piano and coat cam. So yeah, there's a second camera now. We're gonna dual camera stream. Shout out to my wife for just giving me her webcam because she didn't use it and I asked for it. But yeah, so that's where juggles and maybe stretches. I probably have enough room to stretch here, but if I ever needed more space to show something off, I'd go over there. Also on the horizon, a couple people know about this, but I applied for a bunch of game keys to do some more game demo streams. I've applied for, I think, 9 at this point, and I've currently gotten 2 keys. One's a horror game and one's a simulation game. The simulation game is much more common. You have a higher chance of hearing about that one. The horror game, I would be very impressed, actually, if people had heard of it. Dual PC stream. Man. Yeah, by all means, DM me whatever you have questions about setups, about game demo stuff. I've used it. I signed up for 4 different sites. The simulation game I got from one site. It's got pros and cons. And actually, what do I have? I don't have on me what it's called. I can send it to you later. DM me if you want to know. But the cons for it, I guess, is there's not that much selection. I think I currently qualify for 31 games. Most of them are absolute trash. Sire DM. I'll get back to you after stream. But the good news about that is if you qualify, all you have to do is hit apply for it. Instantly gives you the key. So that one was easy. The other one is much more broad. You can search, and they have new games coming in. Since I've signed up a couple of weeks ago, I've seen several dozen new games come in. Some of them look interesting, but interesting in that I wouldn't do them on stream necessarily. But you can apply for keys. And the other thing I like about the second site, that one it's called Catapult by Indie Boost. So if you Google Catapult Indie Boost, that's the second one. So you can apply for any game, and the developers will get back to you. I think I saw on the website they get back in approximately 2 weeks, 10 business days. Is what they expect people to get back to you on. But you can also apply for different systems. So, for example, if a developer's game, say, came out on Steam, PS4, and Switch, you can say, I specifically want a copy of the Switch game, and you can get that. And all these ones I've seen so far, basically, once you're done, you either send them a link to your Twitch VOD or YouTube video or whatever VOD, whatever hosting site you use, just so that they can see, one, are people actually using the keys? Because I'm sure there's some people out there who take keys and just sell them because they're not nice people. And 2, how much traction did it actually get? How many people actually watched it? There were a couple other ones I looked at. And if people want, I know Sam is EDM me, I can get you the list after stream. But yeah, my hope for that was to get at least 3 games, because they're demo versions, and I don't know how long the demo version is, but I figured if they're an hour each, if we gave 3 games an hour each approximately, I think that would be a good stream. And I'm thinking time frame for that maybe early May, maybe. We'll have to see. So yeah, so that's what's coming up. And then we're doing the stream today. There's no stream Friday. My father's got some surgery scheduled for Friday, and I'm going to go help out. My grandfather lives with them, and while my mom and dad are at the hospital for it's just day surgery. It should be routine, no problems, fingers crossed. But they just want someone to be there with my grandfather just to feed him, or in case something were to happen, to take him to the hospital as well. So I'll be there for that. I think after this week, fingers crossed, streams will be back to normal Wednesday, Friday. I think that's the hope, at least. All right, so with all of that out of the way, oh, and also Samus's, just for you, lighting should be better because the lighting is no longer. The lighting used to be like behind me on the one side. The lighting's now in front of me, so I should be better lit. Deadbeard did give me some advice on how to color balance this better, and I haven't done that. I just haven't had time for that yet. So, but I will be color balancing this camera and the piano cam. I don't know why I'm pointing at it. You can't see where my hand is. I could be doing anything right now, and you wouldn't know. But hopefully, I'll be color balancing those by next stream next Wednesday. But yeah. I can also send people. I took just like a picture of what the lighting used to look like, and then there's this. Deadbeard has a good comparison as well. But yeah, lighting should be better as well. I think that's it. So let's hop in. Once again, for those of you who are tuning in who aren't usually part of the Higurashi streams, lots of pretty heavy stuff. Especially, we're going to see 1, possible murder, and 2, child abuse. I can pretty much guarantee we're seeing at least one of those things.
いかがでしたか?
She was looking for the right words. Got a very bad feeling from her reaction alone.
残念だけど、簡単にいかなくなったわ。
So this is, just to give that context again, because I know I said many things just before this. We just asked the two of them, hey, can you just murder this dude's uncle because you have a secret death squad? And Takano, the nurse on our left, is coming back being like, complications.
つい最近、沖宮で殺人事件があったらしいの。その事件に何らかの関与があると疑って、北条哲平を警察がマークしてるらしいわね。
事件？何ですかそれは。
間宮とかいう女が園崎家の上納金に手を出して見せしめに殺されたとかなんとかで、警察が北条家と園崎家の関係に慎重になったらしいのよ。その女はどうも北条哲平と実婚らしい。
Okay, so the reason why Rena, well, there's a couple things. So Rena had already said that she talked to her father before about what I can't remember the woman's name I just said, but the woman who's trying to steal all of her money in the last game. So she's dead now for trying to steal money from Mion's family, the Sonozakis. And of course, I don't know the exact statistic, but it's something like 70% of murder cases, it's the lover, the boyfriend, the partner. Usually it's a man as well. It's something ridiculously high, like 70% of the time they did it. So police are wisely keeping an eye on him.
お社様のたたりの5年目を何とか阻止したい警察が、北条哲平が今年の犠牲者じゃないかとマークして釣り糸を垂らしてるって話みたい。
釣り糸って何なんですか？
北条哲平をマークしてれば、お社様のたたりの真犯人を釣り上げられると睨んでるのよ。
なんてことだ。では、
リカちゃん、本当に申し訳ないんだけど、警察のマークが外れるまで山犬には手の出しようがない。
そんな、山犬の方ならもっと困難な任務でもこなせるでしょうに。
I believe you mentioned in one of the past streams that you found a solution for it, and then I asked, okay, what's left? And your response was basically everything. You have to redo a bunch of the code and the tests and...
それは入念な準備と計画に基づき、しかるべき機を見ての話です。通常は長い監視期間を設け、その上でタイミングを測ります。
I assume that's the solution you're referring to.
今更言うことではありませんが、私たちは決して日の当たるところへ出ることができない存在です。日の
Oh, an
元へ
even
出た
better
なら
solution.
ば
Nice.
灰になる存在なのです。だから、マークされ、眩しく照らし出された今の状態では、近づくことすらできない。
では、いつならその木だと言うんですか？
最も早くて、綿流しの後ね。多分、綿流しが終われば、警察もマークを解くかもしれない。
That would be too late. Saying it'd be after one, Nagashi. I didn't even know if that was a day after or a year after. They also said it usually takes at least 6 months to prepare this kind of mission. That's too long. I thought this world was different. That hope was slipping through my
では
fingers.
どうすれば、さとこちゃんを救えると言うんですか？
日の当たる世界では、日の当たる世界のルールで解決するのが筋かと思います。例えば、警察へ相談する。児童相談所に相談する。差し当たっては、学校、警察、あるいは、それは何度もやったけど無駄だった。
Yuri and Takano were surprised. They never expected me to raise my voice. In fact, I didn't think myself that I would react this way. But I couldn't keep my emotions in check after Takano suggested all those meaningless
私はお
solutions.
前たちにずっと協力してきた。何の見返りも求めず、ただ
It
ただ
can
こ
be a
の身を
right
捧げて
pain.
協力してきた。
Maybe like a month ago, I was working on a project and basically we're integrating like e-commerce sites. That's like my role in it, was to work on integrating new e-commerce sites, while the rest of the team did like usual work on it. But it can take a long time to develop and integrate a new e-commerce site. So sometimes my PRs were there for like a month, 2 months, something like that. And a lot of features and, you know, bug fixes can get pushed in that time. So they had some stuff pushed into master, and they asked me to merge, rebase, whichever you prefer. And there was conflicts, and the conflicts touched over 700 files. And I was just like, oh. That took me a couple days to sort out, going through them one by one. So I tried a couple solutions. I tried merging, I tried rebasing. In the end, what I just end up doing is checking out a clean copy of the master branch, and then copying all of my files on top of it, and just and seeing where it broke. And now they're like, oh, we found a couple issues with it. So now what I'm doing is just cherry picking onto master. The cherry picking my commits onto master. Hello, Deadbeard. How's it going? Yes, we were showing it off before, so there's a debate about that. The official stance is, for new projects, you should be calling it production, staging, development rather than master branch, which I think is the right choice. But for a lot of older projects, when you have pipelines and stuff, just people aren't changing it. But yes, new webcam A and new webcam B, or hello. I can see both sides to it. For new stuff going forward, calling it production, I think, is fine. I think that's how it should be. It's not that difficult of a change, but I understand when you have legacy solutions that have sometimes overly complicated like methods of deployment, stuff like that. You don't want to change it. So I think it's going to stick around for probably at least 15-20 years.
それなのに、 どうしてサトコの一人だけが救えないというのか。あれだけの力を持ちながら、どうしてサトコを救うことにのみ臆病なのか。何の力にもならない警察や役所、そして利用するだけして何も助けてくれないお前たち。もういい、もういい。私はよくわかった。
Yeah, this is true. I have seen some bad names in my time.
この世界が袋小路だということがよくわかった。もうお前たちには興味ない。この世界にも未練はない。そうさ、あれだけの幸運に恵まれても、結局私はこの運命から逃れられなかった。そうさそうさ、またいつもの運命。お前は山奥で焼かれて死ね。お前は睡眠薬で自ら死ね。
Rika's going really off the rails here and just like saying what they're gonna do.
そして私は当然のようにまた死のう。どういう殺され方をするのか。
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that.
命を散らそう。ここは運命の袋小路。行き止まり。
Or just like even at the time, like which standard would make it. Like my dad bought, and I think still has, thank you for host, still has a Zune. If you don't know what a Zune is, Microsoft tried to make their own iPod and it didn't really take off. So I tried iPods. I had, was it a Nano at one point? The one without the screen. I was never a fan of it. What I ended up getting was, if you remember way back in the day, geez, I'm dating myself. If you remember what a Walkman was, the old ones that used to have, you know, like it could hold a single CD, and you'd put it in. So Sony Walkman actually went on to advance from that to actual MP3 players, and they're actually pretty good. So I got one, and the reason why I got it, it had all right storage for the time. So this was, geez, 2008 maybe? In 2008, I want to say it was around that time, 2008, 2009, it was about 16 gigabyte, but the thing I really liked about it is it had lyric syncing. So if you had a song, and you had a lyric file, an LRC file, and you put the lyric file in the same folder as the song, it would automatically play it, and you could see the lyrics as it was going by, which would be great for if you had like a karaoke version, or you just, you had, maybe you were trying to do like some language learning, or you just like listening to songs in other languages, and you could have a translated version at the same time. So there was a couple of years I got really into the LRC file community and actually made some LRC files for several like songs and albums and stuff. And that was a tedious thing back then. Basically, you'd listen to the song, you'd have your editor open. You could find just like, you know, a copy and paste of the song lyrics somewhere. So let's say you're doing, I don't know, Let It Be. So you'd listen to the song, you know, when I find myself, and you'd hit a button and it would auto-create a timestamp at the front, and it would be in square brackets, timestamp format, square bracket close, the line, and then you'd hit another character to go down and reset onto the new line, and you'd repeat. So you'd timestamp, new line, wait for the song, the lyrics play, and you do that. And you'd listen to the whole song once through doing that, then you'd play it with the lyric file, and see how well you matched up. And sometimes, you know, maybe you were like a bit late hitting it on that one, or something like that. Or it had like an interlude, and like it just didn't time up well because it would show this one line, and it would really scroll, and then it would like suddenly jump up or something like that. I got really into that for a couple of years. If you're looking for a Windows solution for this, The one I ended up going with was mini lyrics, which the reason why I liked it is you could set it to have a transparent background and always appear on top of other applications, so that you could put it like at the bottom center of your window as you're playing from iTunes or Windows Media Player or whatever it was. You just had to link them together, and you could always see the lyrics as the song was playing, even if it was in another window. Is there a plugin for Vim? Or Vim or VLM? Vim. I don't know. Dang, Deadbeard. There have been multiple times, like the past 2 weeks, where someone said something comes full circle, and all I think of is just like the Lorax.
私は生まれた時から殺されるために生かされている運命の家畜。みんな死ね死ね、みんな死ね。どうせ終わる世界なんだ。消えてしまえ。
Yeah, I once I saw the Vim. There might be one for Emacs. I'm a Vim person, by the way. I can't put words to my emotions anymore, and I started to cry. I was so lucky up until yesterday. I had so much hope in my heart, but it had all been for nothing. It felt like everything was falling apart. I lived for more than 100 years. I've lived for longer than a normal human lifetime. I thought I was blessed with good fortune for the first time in my life. It would never happen to me again. I thought a miracle had occurred, but everything was shattered. I cried and cursed this world. I needed to give up on my life as soon as possible. Satoko would be waiting for me with a smile on my next one. I wanted to go see her, but what would happen to the Satoko in this world? What would happen if I abandoned her? I didn't know, and I didn't care. Satoko, 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 Satoko. I'm a witch who's lived for 100 years, but I still couldn't rid myself of the human emotions in my heart. I love how we just had a conversation with a doctor and nurse. Deadbeard. The Lorax does not need a gift sub. So for those of you who don't know... Oh gosh, I might have the song. Give me 1 sec.
Suspicious.
Full Circle doesn't need one either. So, a while back, Deadbeard made a video of this channel. This was after the Suspicious video. I have my bagpipes, they're over there. I can't play them. Found it. He made this video. I'm lazy, I'm not gonna add it to scene. But here's what it sounds like.
I am an Umu girl. I am an Oompa Loompa. You could call me Susan. Okay, unknown user. Lorax comes full circle. The people have to try this now. I hope that goal was worthy. We're at the party. You can't prove I said that. There's no me on the screen.
So that's what Deadbeard is referencing with the Lorax comes full circle. The people have to try this now. Those are 2 lines in it. All I remember from that, Deadbeard, is he messaged me going, I have to tell you something. I'm making a new song. I just added the lyrics, the Lorax comes full circle. And I was just like, oh, jeez, what have you done? I didn't get to eat anything because Satoko was supposed to be making dinner tonight. Oh, right, I was going to say, I love how we're just at a clinic with a doctor and a nurse, predicted how they were going to die, basically said we're going to kill ourselves, and they just let us go home. They're just like, I'm kind of hungry. You just want to go grab some food or like. But I didn't have an appetite anyway, so I figured I should just go to bed. I still had to make lunch for the next day, though. Satoko might come to school tomorrow. I rinsed the rice, hoping that I wouldn't have to waste the lunch that I was making for the two of us. I'm gonna go listen to Gerudo Valley with bagpipes. I had to stop thinking like that. I already knew it was a waste to make her lunch. I already knew that Satoko wasn't coming to school ever again. I felt so miserable while rinsing the rice. The tears started dropping into it as I thought about her. Why was this happening in this world? You love the name Bagpipes. I thought everything changed when Keiichi gave the doll to Mion. That was 2 and 4. No, not 2 and 5. Episodes 2 and 5 averted when Keiichi gives the doll to Mion. In that world, Mion pretended to be her sister for a week and got closer to Keiichi. That wasn't happening this time. Thought we would be having a good time until the festival. This is my coat tuba and my box violin. Huh? That's odd. Wasn't that club activity 2 weeks before Watanagashi? I'd realized something. The club activity was exactly the same, but it happened 1 week earlier than in the world I knew of. It was exactly 1 week earlier than in my previous life. I get it now. I thought I was familiar with this world, but it was actually a different one where events are mixed up. That means even though Keiichi gave the doll to Mion, that didn't solve everything. I thought I was getting lucky. I was confident that everything was going to be okay. I stopped making an effort. I knew that there was a possibility that Satoko's uncle was coming back, but I let her go do the grocery shopping. I would have been more careful and kept her home if I knew that he was coming back to get her. I should be careful in my next life. But there wouldn't be a next life that was so fortunate. I didn't get lucky that often. Even if I locked Satoko inside the closet, it would be over if Ren and his father messed up something or Keiichi lost his mind. Dang it, Deadbeard, I see that. I have to clear up everything that's not within my reach. I also have to make the best effort I can. Without that, I can't overcome the fate of 1983. In this life, I may be able to overcome my deadly fate with Takano's help, but Satoko will not be there in my future. That defeats the whole purpose. My goal is to survive this year while laughing with my best friends. I don't want to sacrifice Satoko in order to survive. I don't want to live in a world without her. I was blessed with all those fortunes, but I still couldn't defeat my destiny. I ruined everything because I stopped working so hard. I will never again have a lucky life like this. I lost my first and only chance. Okay, I have a question about your instruments. So, if I take my box violin and I stop putting it in a box, and now I store it inside a coffin. Is it now my coffin violin? Is that how I reference it now? I cried and scratched at the floor. I didn't know if I should curse my fate or curse myself for not putting forth enough effort. Before I realized it, Hanyu was standing in front of me. I didn't know how long she had been there. She just stared down at me with a look of pity on her face.
あんたの言いたいことは分かってる。だから運命に期待するなと言った。でしょ。期待するななんて酷な話よ。あれだけ全てに恵まれた。サイコロを振る前から6が出ると確信できる世界なんて初めてだった。あれだけの勢いがあればきっと打ち破れると信じた。 それでも、あんたは、あの思い期待しすぎるな、と。
She probably felt something strange at the toy store that day. She realized that the date was 1 week off, and this was not the same old world that I knew. She had realized early on that I still shouldn't be too excited about this life.
僕も、リカと一緒にいて、短くないのです。だから、リカに聞かれると思って、先に言いますです。僕にも、今日の運命など、わかりませんでしたです。ただ、僕から助言できるのは、ただ一つ。この世の運命なんて、秋の空より気まぐれで、一喜一憂するにも当たらない、祭事に過ぎないということなのです。
There's 6 sides on a die. Not if you're playing D&D, there's not. That's the reality of it. It doesn't mean that the 6 is the best number either. I should just take any number that I roll. Shouldn't be disappointed if I roll a 1 a few times in a row. Pathetic how I thought rolling a 6 was the best result you could obtain.
100年ちょいを生きるくらいじゃ、そこまで悟るなんて難しいわね。
でもリカ、僕も何度か言いましたが、今回の世界は奇跡ではありませんです。我慢強く待てば、きっとまた巡ってくる世界なのです。
我慢強く待てばって、それは何十年後、何百年後の話なの。
Deadbeard is redeemed stretch. Okay, so we're gonna try...
力は残っている。
We're gonna try this. So I want to see... Actually, I don't want to move this cam. Come over with me to the secondary camera. I might want to raise this up because currently it's at about like waist level and it's angled up a bit, and you get more of like the ceiling, which I guess could be nice for juggling. I did try and put it high enough that you would see when I throw the ball up. One of the bad things though is I can't really read chat from here. Unless I take my phone here, angle it towards me, and then open this. I see my chat. There we go. Keyboard cam height. You're my keyboard? Or is this the smoke detector cam? That is in fact the smoke detector. One thing I like is when we got this place, when we did the renos, is I was used to just having the smoke detectors where like you pull it off and it's got the battery, the huge D-sized battery. These ones are directly into the power lines. You never have to change the battery on them, which is nice. And just for you, here's the keyboard cam. Not that I think you could really see much of that. Yeah, I will be happy to never have to change the batteries in the smoke detector. They're still pretty sensitive. We've only set it off once. It wasn't from cooking or anything. It was we took a shower. It was like a really cold day. We turned the shower heat all the way up to full, and apparently this like the steam when we opened the door, it just like set off the smoke detector. Yeah, exactly. On the bad side, I guess, if like you were like cooking something and you accidentally burnt it, You can't take the battery out to make the fire alarm shut up until like you air out the kitchen.
多分再び世界をやり直しても昭和58年の6月より前へは戻れない。それどころか戻れる時間はどんどん短くなっていく。
What camera is I'm seeing right now? What camera are you? It is... I don't know. I've moved it so much that the next time I switch to this, I'm probably going to have to change it. It's a model N6 1080p. So I'm not sure what brand that is. But that's the model.
So んな短い日々を再び奇跡が起こるまでずっとずっと繰り返せというの。数年を繰り返す世界ですら狂ってしまいそうになるというのに、たった 1,2 週間の世界を再び奇跡が起こるまで永遠に生き続けろというの。無理よ、無理無理、絶対。
You need the I'm a bad cook button. I was betting on this world, bet all of my coins in this one world, and I lost. Lost all of my coins this fate. I have no more coins left in my heart. These coins are known as hope. I have no coins left to hope for my dreams to come true. I lay on the floor as if I collapsed. The floor should have been cold, but I didn't feel anything.
希望をすべて打ち砕かれるということね。
I always thought people could survive as long as they had some bread and water. It's not right. People can't live without hope. People can survive because they believe that something good will happen to them eventually, as long as they keep on living. That's just for normal people who don't know what awaits them in their future. No such hope for a witch like me.
もう何もかもがどうでもいい。この世界だけじゃない。
Hello, Butler. How's it going? Here's your
全て
hydrate.
どうでもいい。このまま灰になってしまえたら。
リカ、そんなことを言ってはダメなのです。リカ。
Honey's voice gradually fades away. I slowly lost my senses as I lay on the kitchen floor and let myself sink into darkness. Kinda trash? That's okay. I'm doing alright. Sorry to hear you're feeling kinda trash. Yeah, doing alright. Work's keeping me busy. Wife and I are going rock climbing tomorrow, so that's exciting. I dragged my body to school hoping that Satoko might be there. But just as I expected, there was no one sitting in her seat. I felt all the more devastated just seeing it empty. I had nothing left to bet on. All I could do was get hurt and suffer devastation. Blood flowed from my broken heart and found its way through my eyes in the form of tears.
古出さん、どうしましたか？今日は北条さんはお休みですか？
The whole class was wondering why I came in late today and why Satoko wasn't with me. Even if I felt sympathy from everyone's eyes on me, I didn't feel any promise from them. No one here was able to save Satoko. No one could save her. Why should I have to keep smiling at all these useless people? Man, that's like a line straight out of like any kind of job where you talk to people. It's like, why do I have to keep smiling at all these useless like customers? This world is finished anyways. I leave matters alone, then a few days after the Wadnagashi festival, my movie reel will be cut as I'm murdered like usual. I'll return to the beginning of this month again. And so I'll continue to live forever in June 1983, trapped here. Even death won't set me free from that
フル
prison.
デさん、何かあったなら話してください。北条さんは今日はどうしたんですか？風邪でお休みですか？うるさいな。
Whole class gasped. No one expected Rika Frude to talk like that. I myself made such blunt statements a few times in several past worlds, but it was always the first time that anyone in that world heard anything like that. It must have been very easy for them, and I envied it.
フルデさん。
Chie was standing there dumbfounded. I stood up from my seat. If Satoko wasn't around, I didn't want to be locked up inside of this humid place. I'm not coming here anymore. Goodbye. I felt like saying something like that. However, I retained the small hope that Satoko might go to school the next day, so I kept it to myself. However, Chie wouldn't let me go. She grabbed me by the arm and dragged me to the teacher's office instead. This was back in 1983 when a teacher could lay their hands on you. I say that as if I was around in 1983, which I was not. She told me to take a seat on the couch by the principal's office. She had no right to tell me what to do. I could just escape through the open window. As I didn't have that kind of energy, however, I sat on the couch as she told me to. I realized then that I didn't even have the energy to be rebellious. Maybe Satoko felt the same. She lost the energy to rebel, and so she was simply obeying her uncle.
フルデさん、何があったか話してください。先生はきっと力になれますよ。
Also, props to this teacher for not, losing it after the student is just like, shut up, I don't want to be here, I'm leaving. She spoke to me, but I already knew that her words were empty. All she would do is call the child consultation center. She wouldn't go to the Hojo residence and pull Satoko out of there. There's no point in even discussing the topic with her. I told her she wouldn't keep it to herself. Shortly everyone would know what was happening with Satoko. That would only result in chaos. We don't want him here. They call the child consultation center. The staff from there will go and visit Satoko. Her uncle will deny the abuse, and Satoko will also deny it because of the guilt she feels over Satoshi leaving. Shortly after, they'll find out about the false report Satoko made before, and will decide not to proceed any further. Her uncle will allow Satoko to go to school for a few days, but his abuse will get worse because he'll think she's the one who called the child consultation center. He'll do horrible things to her, just like her aunt did last year. Calling the child consultation center will not help Satoko. It will instead put her in an even worse situation. It's better not to notify them at all. But if we don't report it, then how else is this world supposed to improve? No, nothing is going to change. There's nothing that can be done once this unfortunate fate overtakes Satoko.
北条さんのおじさんが？それは本当ですか？
I'd somehow answered all of Chie's questions without noticing. I knew that nothing would change whether I spoke to her or not, so I just told her everything, because I had no energy to rebel.
だいたい状況はわかりました。大変なことになりましたね。で、そこまで知って、あなたは何ができるの？
Chie answered right away without faltering, already used to my spiteful tone.
今日、夕方に家庭訪問に行ってみます。まずは聡子ちゃんに会って、事情を聞いてみます。それで、問題があるようならば、児童相談所に相談するって言うんでしょ。聡子は、過去に嘘の通報をした記録が残ってると思うからね。虐待の確たる証拠がないと、動いてくれないわ。人が殺されるまで捜査をしてくれない警察と全く同じよ。聡子が殺されるまで相談所は動いてなんかくれない。そうすると相談所も学校もこう言うの。いじめの兆候は全くなかった。普段は明るくて全く予見できなかったって。誰かが用意してくれたコメントを読み上げるみたいに同じことを言うのよね。 本当にバカばっかね。
そこはきっと相談所の人が何とかしてくれると思います。私も北条さんの窮状をしっかり訴えます。
She'd done the same in previous lives, too. I wasn't denying her passion, but I couldn't say that there was meaning to it. The problem wasn't with Chie. The problem was with them. No matter how hard Chie tried to seek help from child services, it meant nothing as long as they held biased notions about Satoko.
そんなの証拠があるかどうかなんて関係ないじゃないですか。
I suddenly heard a voice from the hallway. It was Shion's voice. Chie shouted, "Who's there?" and I heard Mion gasping, "Crap." I must have been listening to our conversation. They were having a quiet discussion outside the door, but Shion accidentally raised her voice. She gets so violent sometimes. 4 people entered into the room from the hallway. Mion, Shion, Keiichi, and Rena.
自習だと言ったはずですよ。委員長は皆さんを連れて教室に戻りなさい。そんな場合じゃないです。里子に何かあったら先生、どう責任を取るつもりなんですか？取れないでしょ？ひよってる場合じゃないです。すぐに行動を起こさなきゃダメです。お姉のバカとかはちゃんとした証拠がないとむしろ事態を悪化させかねないとか言ってますけど、そんな証拠が残った後じゃ遅いんです。ミオンは里子を見殺しにする気？そこまでは言ってないよ。さっきも言ったように、里子には過去に沖宮の相談所に嘘の通報電話をした経験があって、それ以来マークされてるんだよ。だからしっかりした証拠がなければ必ず訪問調査だけして様子見ってことになる。それはどういうことか考えなよ。おじの怒りに油を注ぐだけ。里子を余計追い詰めるだけなんだよ。
くそ、なんだよそれはよ。何かある前に手を施すのが救うってことだろ。里子に何かあるまで放置しろってのか。
みんな落ち着いて。私もしーちゃんやケイイチくんと同じ意見。何かあるまで様子を見ようなんてのは絶対思わない。なら何ができるのかを考えなくちゃ。
何かってなんだ。児童相談所に相談することだろ。絶対に助けてくれるならいいが、様子見になる確率が高いってミオはそう言ってるわけだろ。
うん、悔しいけど昨年がそうだったように、しかも今年は昨年に比べたら状況がまだまだ甘いの。去年は里子が十分に追い詰められている状態だった。でも今回はまだおじに連れ去られて1日しか経ってない。しかもおじは1年間放置していたとはいえ親権を持ってるし。そんな回りくどいことなんか必要ないでしょ。そんな野郎待ち伏せてぶっ殺してやればいい。
しーちゃん、そんなのダメ。サトシくんはそんなのを絶対に喜ばないよ。
じゃあサトコを
I
どう
would
やっ
say
て
you
助け
can't
ればいい
just
ん
go
です？
around killing uncles, but
サトシくんに頼まれた。サトコを頼むって頼まれた。私サトコに何かあったらサトシくんに顔向けできないよ。サトコがいじめ抜かれた後じゃないと手が打てないなんて、そんなの方法じゃない。目の前で現在進行している犯罪はまず通報するの？違うでしょ。止めなきゃ。
thank you, Deadbeard.
私たちの手で自ら止めなきゃ。落ち着きなよシオン。おねえ、その先本家の当主でしょ。本家の力でサトコを助けてよ。できるでしょ。サトコ一人を助けるくらいの力は十分にあるでしょうね。分かってるよ。ダム戦争で遺恨が残る北条家には一切関わらないってばあさんの方針なんでしょ。サトコがどうなろうと見て見ぬふりというのがその先本家の方針なんでしょ。沖宮の相談所に助けられなくて園崎家にも助けられないなら私がやるしかないじゃないですか。私がやるよ。サトコを不幸にするやつはぶっ殺してやる。
Popeye, I sent special messages out to my moderators earlier this week to motivate us. The one Deadbeard received was, "Great, anytime we want to come back and look at his... we can come back and look at his little sister." Deadbeard, do I want to know why little sisters motivate you?
今すぐ殺してやる。この場からサトコの家まで行って刺し殺すのに1500秒もかからないんだから。
So, right here, what Shion is saying is almost word for word what Keiichi thinks in Chapter 3. And this sound effect also plays. This is the sound effect for, like, conspiracy, murder, dark thoughts, that kind of thing.
あんたたちには1500秒で何ができる？何もできないでしょ？私が助ける。私がサトコを助けるの。 離してよ！離してよ！今から殺しに行くんだから！シオンさん、お静かになさい。物騒なことをこれ以上言うと怒りますよ。
They were desperately discussing how to save her. I just sat on the couch and stared at them vaguely. I'd seen the same discussion many times, many different situations. I was tired of listening to it. The only difference was that everything was happening a few days earlier than usual.
リカ、
大丈夫。もう何にも期待なんかしないから。期待なんてどこにも残ってない。
Then he made a sad expression. I couldn't tell if she was sad about our fate or if she was taking pity on me. Just as she promised, Chie went to Satoko's house after school. It had only been a day since Satoko's uncle took her away. She wouldn't be able to tell if he'd heard her already or not. If the students hadn't made such a big fuss about it, Chie would have waited a couple days before going to her house. She already knew, however, about what happened to Satoko the previous year. She also knew that her uncle was abusing her just like her aunt, that he had neglected to act as her guardian for the whole year. Considering those factors, it might not have been too soon for her to visit the Hojo residence. Satoko hadn't shown up in school that day. No one called the school to explain her absence. That alone was proof that her uncle wasn't taking responsibility as her guardian. Chie was going to go to her house and see what was going on with her own eyes. She parked the car on the street and checked the map she brought from the school. It said Hojo residence on the sign in front of the house. She was certain that this had to be the place. The window on the second floor was open. She could see a curtain hanging there. From that window, she could hear the laughing voices of several old men. No one had answered the phone when she called right before leaving the school. She could also hear the clicking noise of mahjong tiles along with the voices. She had never played mahjong before, but had a pretty good idea that was it from the way the men were talking. They were playing mahjong. Must have been 3 other men inside the house. Is this an uncle convention? I mean, makes it easier on us. Her students had told her that Satoko's uncle was a very violent man. She was a teacher, true, but she was also just a young lady. She felt hesitant to ring the doorbell after hearing their disgusting laughter. But courage drove her forward. She made her decision and rang the doorbell. She heard the bell ring inside the house. The laughing voices continued to echo from the second floor. It seems that they didn't hear the bell. She rang the bell again, and this time the laughter stopped for a moment. Someone must have heard the sound. Soon after, they started laughing again. It didn't sound like anyone was coming to get the door. Thought someone heard the bell, but perhaps not. She was sure they were home, of course. She couldn't leave just because no one was answering the door. She knocked and yelled loudly this time.
Konnichiwa!
That's loudly. Just so you're aware. You're like, Konnichiwa. That's yelling.
Hojo-san, いらっしゃいませんか?
Finally, the laughter stopped, and a man with a scary look on his face opened the door. What a pleasant young man. What a wonderful way to just, like, talk to someone who's knocking on your door. Chie felt intimidated by him, but her heart was filled with a teacher's pride and responsibility.
こんにちは。北条さんでいらっしゃいますか？私。
Before she could introduce herself, Teppy screamed at her.
やかましか！新聞も牛乳も保険も間に合っとんねん。わしは今むっちゃ忙しいよ。仕事中じゃいね。
The people in the room laughed when he told her he was working. But Chie wouldn't give up. She continued to speak.
私、ひなみ沢文庫教諭の知恵と申します。北条さと子さんはいらっしゃいますか？
ああ、なんじゃよ踊れ。なんで踊りにさと子合わせにならんねん。
今日、北条さんが学校をお休みしましたけれど、連絡がなかったもので、何かあったのかと思いお伺いさせていただきました。
What would a teacher want with their student? Like...
ああ、学校？
はい。さと子ちゃんはいますか？
Meanwhile, it doesn't seem like this guy ever actually went to school, because he doesn't understand the concept.
ちょっとお話ししたいことがあるのですが。
ああ、風邪なんね。そうそう。さと子は風邪で熱出してるんですわ。
プリントとかをお渡ししたいので、ちょっとだけお話しすることはできませんか？
ドアホ！踊れ話聞いてなかったんかい。さと子は風邪じゃ。うなっとるね。それを合わせられるかいボケ。
そうですか。明日は登校できそうですか？
知るかいな。そんなもん明日になってみなきゃわからんわ。このクソボケ。
そうですか。わかりました。では、さと子ちゃんによろしくお伝えください。失礼します。
The uncool hunt. Okay. Alright. Uncool people are whoever say things like this. No second coming jokes, no tentacled commandment jokes. No. So if you've made a joke about coming, or about tentacles and commandments, you are the uncool person. She bowed, but by the time she lifted up her head, Teppy was no longer there. When Chie returned to school, several students emerged from the classroom. Keiichi, Rena, Mion, and Shion. Rika was also still inside the classroom, but she wouldn't come outside.
先生、どうでしたか？さと子のとこに行ってきたんですよね。皆さん、それが聞きたくて待っていたんですか？
千恵先生、さと子はどうでしたか？無事でしたか？
それが会わせてもらえませんでした。あんた何しに行ったんですか？教師でしょ？ガキの使いじゃないんです。会えませんでした。そうですかで帰ってきちゃ意味ないじゃないですか。やめなよシオン。そんなこともあるだろうって予想できたことだよ。どうせさと子の顔に青あざがあるに決まってます。だから会わせられないんです。そこは無理やり押しのけても家の中に踏み入るくらいしなきゃダメなんです。だからもう先生なんて信用できないって言いました。本当にごめんなさい。
やめなよ、しーちゃん。先生はできる範囲の最善を尽くしてくれたよ。
だが、これで本当にはっきりしたな。その里子のおじってやつが、里子を家に閉じ込めているってのは、どうやら間違いないみてえだ。
そんなの確かめる前から分かってます。リカちゃまがそうだって昼間からずっと言ってるじゃないですか。 それを確かめるだけに半日費やしたんですよ。それでどうするんですか？どうやって聡子を助けるつもりですか？だから落ち着きなって。それをみんなで考えようよ。シオンが聡子のことを大事だと思うように、私たちだって大事に思ってる。決して見殺しになんかしない。私たちにできることを考えようよ。そうですね。私はもう考えて提案しましたよ。私がたった一人で今日中に決着できるものすごくお手軽な方法です。死体を隠すとこだけお姉の力を借りますが。
だからしーちゃん、物騒な話をするのはやめて。しーちゃんは人殺しのことを簡単に
Says the
考え
person
す
who
ぎなの。
murdered people last time.
人を殺せば解決できるなんて考え方は、およそ思いつく考えの中で最低の最低、本当の最低のことなの。な
ら他に提案をしてみてくださいよ。私の提案が最低の最低なら、私よりほんのちょっぴり上等な程度でいいですから、代案を聞かせてください。ほら何も言えないじゃないですか。
Okay, so are the stories standalone? So up until this chapter, this is chapter 7. Chapter 7. They played out as if they're standalone chapters. However, the start of this chapter, where we're playing as Rika, the blue-haired girl, it starts off with her and Hanyu, who's the guardian god of this village, basically being that Hanyu keeps turning back time so that they can try and find a peaceful resolution to this where no one dies. And the previous 6 games are 6 stories that have happened, but they've happened many times, and there are other stories outside of that have happened. To the point where, if you were to chain all those together in a line, Rika would be several hundred years old at this point in time. And the god's power is running out. It used to be they could go back 2 or 3 years, and then a year, a couple months, like 1 or 2 months, and now they're at the point in time where they can only go back 2 or 3 weeks before people start killing each other. So that's how like all the other stories kind of like get tied together, is they're all different. I like to play time travel games, apparently. So yeah, so you had the one piece here, and then they go back, and then something different happens, and then someone else becomes the killer. And so they've spent these several hundred years trying to come up with, you know, like, what are the commonalities, what changes, what things trigger this and that. And I've been trying to point them out as we've been going through this. So, in the first game, spoilers for like the past 6 games. If you're here, and good luck, there have been spoilers for a lot of this already. In the first game, Keiichi goes insane because his friends don't tell him about the history of the city. That, you know, there's a series of murders, that there was conflict, that a dude got dismembered. So when they tell him that resolves that, then he trusts them. So that's number 1. In the second and fifth are basically the same plot, but told from 2 different points of view. In that one, Shion, the middle character here, pretends to be Mion, the rightmost character here, and kills basically everyone, locking them up in their family's dungeon. There's a lot of history behind that, but really the cause is Mion comes to her being like, hey, Keiichi, the boy I love, doesn't see me as a woman. He just sees me as, like, one of the guys, quote-unquote. So if Keiichi treats her like a woman, then 2 and 5 are avoided. 3 is the one that we haven't avoided, which is Satoko's uncle comes and takes her back into custody and abuses her. And they've yet to find a way to stop that. And then the 4th episode is one that actually takes place several years in the past of this, where there's a kidnapping of, like, the grandson of the Minister of Transportation or something like that, or Construction. I can't remember exactly what his title is. that's carried out by the Sonozaki family, and they hide him over here. And in that one, there's a detective who comes from Tokyo here investigating this, what they think is a very low potential lead that the Sonozaki family is doing it because they were going to put a dam up that would create like this artificial lake that would just submerge the village and no one can live here anymore. And of course, they don't want that. They don't want to have to move. So they use this as leverage. And when the detective's there, Rika says to him, "You should go home, because if you don't, something bad's going to happen." And that wasn't like a threat, like, "I'm going to kill you if you stay here." It was, if he didn't go home, his wife was going to slip and die, because she was in the hospital about to give birth to their first child. And there's like some loose like tiles on like one of the stairwells. I guess it's like tiled for whatever reason, and she slips and dies. So he goes back. If he goes back to his wife, she doesn't go up and down the staircase because he's there with her. So then he returns here because Riku's like, "Come back and save me in the future, because several years from now there's going to be this issue," which he has come back for. So that's the past 6 games, and then this one is kind of the amalgamation of all those pieces, and that learning that they're all a cohesive storyline in terms of like a linear narrative, just with time travel going back less and less times and more branches and whatever. So now this is Rika trying to be like, okay, we know all this stuff. We know what happens. We know somewhat why it happens, but how can we prevent it? And they actually talk about a lot of the things off screen that she's done, like contacting the police, like literally having a contingent of armed guards around her that she still gets murdered anyways. And she doesn't remember the like hour, 2 hours before she gets murdered. So she doesn't, that like time bit, they don't know what happened, so they don't know like who murders her and why or how or any of that information. I think that about covers it. Let me know if you have questions. I'll be honest, the ending to this game, the series, like I've done I would like to say a fair bit of like research and stuff on it, and I still go back and like, why did they do this? Like, how does this end? Yeah, so some of the other stuff we've learned, so like besides like Rika's tried like armed guards and contacting the police, and like there was one time she literally just ran away. She like, it's like, if I'm not here, they can't kill me. So she runs away and lives in the woods for like 3 months, and they find her and kill her anyways. What was I gonna? There was a big chunk I was missing. That I was gonna mention. Crap. It'll come to me. There was something else I wanted to add on to that. It'll come to me. I'll have like an oh moment, and then it'll come, and then I'll say whatever it was. Oh, well, this wasn't what I wanted to say, but besides Rika and the deity, no one else remembers the other world lines, except for like little bits and pieces. So in the last game, at the very end, Keiichi remembers the first world line where he kills Rena and Mion. And because of that, he can like empathize with Rena, who's going crazy, being like, hey, like, I don't know how I know this, but I literally did the same thing. I killed all you guys. I went crazy. Like, I understand where you're coming from. And he knows, like, here's what she's thinking. Here's her thought process at this time. I'm going to say this because it's what I mean, but I know that she doesn't believe a word of what I'm saying because she has this specific mindset at this point in time. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. We've also learned a couple other things. One, the reason why people go crazy is a disease. It's a type of parasite that is accustomed to the climate around this area. They don't specify quite how far it is, but people can live, a couple towns over and it's fine. But if you go too far, the parasite's accustomed to this climate, and it messes with your brain. It makes you see things. It makes you feel bad, in the hopes that you'll go back. They'll go back to this village where it feels comfortable. And this parasite has like different levels of, and I can't remember how many it was. It was more than I thought. 7 or 8 levels of like how crazy it makes you. And if you hit a certain level, it's like if you like go a little bit crazy, you can back down. But if you get to a certain point, you can't go back down. And Satoko is at that point where they medicate her. So every week she's going to the doctor and getting shots, which she has to administer to herself. Sometimes I think they said 3 or 4 times daily, that suppress this urge to go crazy. Which is why in all these world lines, who's gone crazy? Keiichi, Rena, Shion are the 3 that have gone crazy. Satoko has never gone crazy because she's on this medication. And Rena doesn't go crazy because she's aware of all the stuff that's happening. So the other stuff we learned from that is the doctor and nurse here, who we started this episode at, they are here doing research on Satoko and this disease, and Rika, who is also aware of this disease. And Satoko doesn't know. She thinks she's just there doing like a long-term clinical study, and they're paying her for it. It's really just research grant that they're getting and passing on to her. And their long-term goal is to come up with a cure for this disease. And the photographer, who comes once a year for a month or so, just before the festival, he's not really a photographer. He's actually with the ministry's, disease control unit, and he's getting like an annual update, and they have basically like a conference where they discuss the progress. They have like meetings to discuss, the usual stuff like plans for the next year, the budgets, and the doctor's like, hey, we want all the money. The government's like, we want to give you none of the money. Hey, give us some of the money. That's how negotiations work. So yeah, so we've learned this. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's probably encompassed into like the first several hours of this game, where they just hit you with a bunch of information, where it's like, hey, some of this you probably should have noticed. Like, you should have noticed that, like, the nurse always dies, and the photographer always dies. Those 2 always die the night of the festival. And it's always the same way. The photographer claws his throat out, the nurse gets burned in an oil drum in the middle of the mountain in the middle of nowhere. And they go into specific things like, oh, these are the people who will go crazy, and it's always these people. If Satoko's uncle comes back, she always gets abused, and these kinds of things. So they talk about all those different bits. To do cleanup and GitHub issues sounds like a good idea.
お姉の力なんか借りられなくてもいい。死体なんか私が引きずって鬼ヶ淵の沼にでも放り込んでやる。
And now, some of the stuff that's different here as well is Shion is actually acting like a good sibling to Satoko, which was the last wish of Satoshi before he went missing. So she's actually a part of a lot of these conversations that she wasn't in before, or she was pretending to be Mion and couldn't voice her opinions. So right now she's showing her hot-headed side, whereas Mion's more calm, cool, collected, let's think it through, where she's saying exactly what Keiichi did in the ending where he kills the uncle.
ほら、提案してくださいよ。これより早くてすぐにサトコを救える方法を。
だからそうじゃないの。一人で悩んだらそんなことしか考えられないの。ならはっきり言ってあげるよ。1500秒？かかりすぎでしょ、そんなの。私なら1000秒かけないよ。しーちゃんなんかみたいにぐちぐち言わずに黙って教室を出て行ってもう実行してるよ。なんでそうしないと思う？昔誰かに教えられたことがあるの。たとえそれしか方法がなかったとしても殺人に訴えるのはいけないこと。正しいことじゃない。最善手なんかじゃないの。 それしかないと思ってしまうことが一人で悩むことの限界なの。
A long time ago. I don't know who told me this, but someone taught it to me. There's something that troubles you. You can't think about it all on your own. You can't think that your own solution is the best way to conclude things.
みんなで考える。みんなで悩む。
That's what Keiichi tells Ren in the last world
確か
line.
に、今この瞬間は、しーちゃんの短絡的な提案に対する提案をできないけど、
いいとか悪いとかの問題じゃないです。1分1秒でも無駄な時間を費やせば、聡子がどんな乱暴されるか考えればいいじゃないですか。北条って性がそんなに憎らしい？サトシ君や聡子がどんなに辛くても誰も手を差し伸べないの？私が助ける。ご託なんてもうたくさん。そこをどいてよ。そこまで言うなら今から行ってくる。あいつをサクッと殺して聡子を助け出してくる。
ダメだよしーちゃん。しーち
ゃん、お前たちは呪ってろ。自分たちの無力さをいつまでも。そしてより集まって思いつきもしない妙案を議論し合えばいい。そうして聡子のために何かしているという免罪符を得ながら聡子を看板に見殺しにしていけばいい。あんたたちは誰も聡子のことを大事に思ってないんだ。
Also, I've mentioned this before on stream, so this whole series was written by a government official who was fed up with how the government did stuff and wanted to put his feelings about how the government failed its people, especially marginalized peoples, which in his case he was talking about people who live in more rural settings, people who need help. So in this case, you know, people who are abused, people in situations where they can't escape without physical harm, people who need like therapy or a counselor, which several of the people in the series have. And he wanted to put all of that into a game, and this is what he came up with. So right now, what he's trying to convey through Shion is, how has the system failed? And like this whole scenario is, how are systems failing children? So you have, you know, the child support center, that they don't act timely enough, that they don't believe children, that they treat children who have maybe made false reports in the past like they can no longer be trusted. And Rika actually says something that was very, I think, on point earlier when she says, all organizations do is at the end say, there's no way we could have seen this coming, there's no way this could have been avoided. Which isn't true. Like, people reach out, but you're ignoring them, you're not acting on it, you're not doing your job. And I know this is a whole much larger topic. I don't think anyone has a solution for this. That's going to be like perfect 100% of the time to make sure that children are safe in the proper care and hands at all times. But they can certainly be better than they are. And that's what they're trying to get at here. Or at least that's what I think they're trying to get at.
私は違う。聡子は友達以上、家族だとすら思ってる。あんたたちとは聡子を大事に思う心が違うの。じゃあね、殺してくるね。さようなら。待ちな。何を邪魔する気ですか？
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating, and the creator, they're still relatively unknown despite the I would say fairly significant success of their series. There's very little known about them. Like, they don't really make public appearances. When they first released the game and they went to Comic-Con, which is the big convention in Tokyo that happens twice a year, once in the summer and once in the winter, for gaming, cosplay, manga, anime, like all these kinds of things. He sold, it was an underwhelming number. It was like 7 copies of his game over like the whole whole convention. But from that, because you have to also remember, this is the original art style. He did all of it by himself. He did the art, the script, the sound. I don't even think there really was sound. At best, there was probably like sound effects at the time. And since then, you can see the evolution. So this is when they did the remake for, I think this was PSP or PlayStation 2, which actually has lip reading. And his eyes move there. So if you watch as they're talking, you can see that there's some animation to it. And this is how we discovered you can glitch it. So you can now see there are actually two different styles because I pressed it as the animation on K2 is happening. So now they're in two different styles. And the one we play in is the modern anime style. And all of this is done with 0.7 expansion mod, which no one should be playing without. But when he first came out with it, people loved the idea behind the game, the first one, and within, I think it was a couple months, he had people volunteering to do all of the music and sound effects for him for free. And from that, it kept piling on. I don't think there were... Gosh dang it. Thank you, Deadbeard, for making us all lose the game and probably bringing Samus out of Lurk. But yeah, I think what he's done here, and I went through it at one point. Actually, let me see if I still have it. There was one point I was looking up just the sheer amount of dialogue in this. And I think it was something, if you take all of the pieces that have been written, let me see if I can find this exactly, that it was like twice the length of the Bible, or twice the length of, I found it, twice the length of the entire Harry Potter series written down. Okay. So this is based on, someone went and did some awesome investigation into this. This was based on the text files for this game, in which they say 1 kilobyte corresponds to about 285 Japanese characters, not counting the links to the sound, to the audio associated with that line. Which translated is in the ballpark of around 120 English words, approximately, and they say there's some wiggle room on that. The main series of this game, which we're in 7 out of 8, if you do the games plus all the post-game content and all that, is approximately 1.25 million English words. Which is approximately 10,440 kilobytes. There's then bonus arcs, and there's a bunch of spin-off arcs and alternate endings and stuff like that, which themselves add up to just about another million words. So the whole series itself is approximately 2 million English words. Which they say is approximately twice the length of the entire Harry Potter series or the Bible, rivaling Rance X for potentially the most text ever contained within a single game. So yeah, it's the sheer number of words in this is approximately the length of the Bible plus Harry Potter together, and it still beats it by a little bit, with a bit of fuzz, because it's based off of size. So yeah. So... And actually, how long was that first game? Let me find that. Because that was what he released. The first one would have been... I'll just do some rough multiplication. Is that about 125,000 words, approximately? So for that first game alone, he wrote about 125,000 words. And the author has self-described this as not being a visual novel, but being a sound novel. And they actually, if you don't know what a sound novel is, a sound novel is, if you've ever like gone to like the library or something and someone like reads the book out for you, that's a sound novel. So one of the most important things to them was having good voice actors. And they've done that. If you listen to Shion when Shion is angry, and here, let's continue a little bit. Actually, I can...
何を邪魔する気ですか？サトコのことなんか遊び友達だとしか思ってないんだ。私は違う。サトコは友達以上、家族だとすら思ってる。あんたたちとはサトコを大事に思う心が違うの。じゃあね、殺してくるね。
They wanted voice actors who had great emotion for it, because these characters go through a lot. In a lot of like typical media fashion, you have periods of high intensity, of high tension, high blood, gore, horror, that kind of stuff. And you want to offset that, because you don't want to have just like all of that together. You want to have moments of reprieve. So the game, what it'll often do is, as the day builds up, it gets more and more tense, with the climax right before the end of the chapter. And then at the next day, it drops back down, and it continues this seesaw graph, gradually getting higher and higher. So the characters go through a wide range of, what I think is a wide range of emotions, from starting more, lighthearted, to having, the people going crazy, so you need to be able to act like you are crazy, or at least really passionate about something. Probably the best example I've seen in this entire series is where Shion and Mion are talking. This is, I think it's going to be in the 5th game. Yeah, it's going to be in the 5th game. Where Shion has locked up Mion in their family's dungeon. The dialogue between those two, like, that scene is just fantastic. Like, that is probably the peak voice acting for this entire series.
殺しをするほんのちょっとの度胸があればすぐに救えるのに、それを綺麗事でごまかす偽善の話ですよね。
シオン、お前が人殺しをしてまでサトコを救ったとして、サトコは感謝すると思ってるのか？
感謝が欲しいわけじゃないです。
And then on top, so the visual novel came first. After this,
別に私は差し違えてもいい。
I was waiting to see when it would flip back.
それでサトコが幸せになれるなら、
I think it'll flip back when Keiichi changes his position. There we go. Thank you, game, for doing exactly what I asked you to do.
口先の威勢はなかなかいいが、お前には差し違える度胸な
So it keeps the sprite for that position, but as soon as it changes the sprite because they have a different position, then it'll switch back to the correct one.
その証拠に、お前はさっきミオンに、
But yeah, so it went from the visual novel to the anime. There's also manga adaptations of all of these, although some of them are really hard to find. There are some that I know exist, but I literally have not been able to find it by any means.
それはつまり、差し違えたくない。おじをぶっ殺した後、元の平穏な生活に戻りたいって願望の表れじゃないか。
Several live adaptations, so live action, including one where all the girls are played by a Korean pop band. It's had a a stage adaptation of the first game. So it's been done in a wide variety of media at this point in time. And of course there was actually just the sound novel version where it just takes all of the voice acting from this and just plays it like an audiobook.
俺たちみんなが仲良く楽しく過ごしていたあの世界への回帰なんだ。だがな、お前が殺人を犯せば絶対にその世界へは戻れない。 そうそう簡単に完全犯罪なんかができると思うなよ。お前は絶対に逮捕される。
Wouldn't that be confusing? The sound novel version?
それくらい覚悟の上です。
What I don't know from that is there's lines here that aren't voiced, and what I don't know is how those are voiced for it. Like if it's like, oh, I went to school that day. They may have actually had the voice actors themselves voice all those bits as well. Just they never ported that into the game. I'm not certain on that. But for the most part, you don't actually need the visual for this game series. It definitely adds to it. But remember, this is what it originally looked like. And I'd probably rather look at a blank screen than this.
違うな。絶対にそれは違うな。お前は自分を呪うぜ。かけてもいい。
Also, I'm just thinking from like production-wise, it would be much cheaper to make the sound novel version. Because they're already mixing the audio for the game. And I don't even know if they had like the background like music that's playing right now. I don't know if they had that in the sound novel. They might not have. So it would have been a lot easier and cheaper for them to make the sound novel version of this.
そしてその時になってようやくシオンが本当に求めていたことに気がつくんだよ。それは叔父を殺すことじゃない。みんなと元の世界に戻ることだ。そしてそれは殺人を犯すことで台無しになってしまうんだよ。そしてお前が自分を呪うようにサトコも自分を呪うだろうな。自分が原因でシオンが殺人を犯す羽目になったとずっと後悔すると思う。第一、お前がいなくなったら誰がサトコにカボチャを食わせるんだよ。誰がサトコと陰険なトラップの相談をするんだよ。お前だろ。園崎シオンだろ。お前が本当に目指す世界にはお前がサトコの脇にいなければダメなんだよ。そこを間違えるな。サトコのためだと錯覚して自ら取り返しのつかない間違いを犯すんじゃない。
そこまで言うならケイちゃんはサトコを救う方法を何か提案できるんですか。できないでしょ。口先だけの綺麗事で私の邪魔立てをするな。だからそこをどいて殺す。私が今から殺しに行く。
Keiichi blocked her way by standing in front of the door. Shion gave him a hateful glare. He just sent her back a confident smile. This also doesn't exactly work because the classroom has two doors. It's one of those ones where it has the door at the front and the door at the back. But also, you can see from the background that these backgrounds are based off of the PlayStation remake because of how they drew Keiichi.
俺たちの望む世界はシオンが欠けたら成立しない。だから俺はお前を生かさないぞ。
Also, kind of looks like his left hand got like stung by a bee with like how it's like warped.
ならケイちゃんは北条鉄平をかばってるってわけですね。なら同罪だ。お前から先に頭を叩き割ってやる。ちょっとバカシオン、やめなよ。シオンさん、その椅子をどうするつもりですか？
Yeah, it also looks like he's one long arm and one small arm. He's also about to get WWE'd right in the face.
やめなさい。椅子を床に置きなさい。ケイちゃんがこの後に及んでまだ私が本気だって分かってないならマジで血見ます。謝んなくていいですからとっととどきやがれってんです。
シオン、確かに今この瞬間俺はよりいい提案をできない。でもそれは今思いついてないだけのことだ。
Someone needs the belt. Gosh dang it, Deadbeat, for a second, just because of the nature of the game. I thought you meant to like whip them with it, not to be the champion.
俺たちはきっと里子を助けるもっとマシな方法を考え出す。絶対にだ。絶対に俺たちが里子を救う。だからな。信じろ、仲間を。
仲間である里子のために手を汚さない連中に。
I was trying to think of like what the right like way to say that you're gonna get. I was trying to think of the right way to be like, oh, like give him the chair. Like, is he gonna get wrestled? Is that the right way to say it? But yeah, I can tell you why my brain did this. Because my brain was thinking there is actually a point in the anime. One of the, like, despite all the things in this series, there's some things that just stick with you. And one of them is Shion does just like straight up beat someone with a chair and like literally flings them like 10 feet across the classroom. Please don't give people the electric chair.
シオンこそ頭を冷やして考え直せ。俺たちはきっと里子を救える。
So my brain went from giving someone the chair like that to just giving someone the belt.
それを信じろ。だから短絡的な考えに走るんじゃない。仲間を信じろ。仲間呼ばわりされたくないってんなら前原圭一が必ず里子を救う。だからそいつにかけてみろ。黙れ無力。お前なんか信じられるか。お前にどうやって里子が救えるというのか。シオン。
Shion threw the chair at Keiichi. Hit him hard, and the chair fell to the floor with a loud noise. Keiichi was unfazed even after being struck, so I think he gets the belt. He just stood there in front of the exit without even covering his face. But yeah, so, some of the moments that stick with you, there's that. Probably the moment that sticks... Actually, there's probably 3 moments that stick with people the most, in no particular order. There's this, and I'll try and be as vague. I won't name names in case people like really want to see this. There's a scene where someone takes a knife, puts it against the wall, and smashes their head into it repeatedly to kill themselves. To me, that's the worst scene. There's a scene of someone ripping their own nails off. What was the third one I was going to say? Oh, there's a scene where someone is tied to a cross and then stabbed repeatedly in the arms, probably at least like 50 times. And in the game they describe it as they kept stabbing until they hit bone and then moved on to another location. A trail of blood was pouring from his forehead where the corner of the chair hurt him. He looks fine. They'd be thinking this. Oh yeah, that's the face Chaos wants to step on him. So Chaos wants to give someone the chair and then have that person just stomp all over them. Got it.
その程度で俺が道を譲ると思ったかよ。殺されたって俺はここをどかねえぞ。お前を生かせればシオンのいない世界になる。
He wants WW Eddie.
その世界ではいなくなったお前のことをずっと思って毎日うつむいている里子がいるんだ。俺たちがどうやって慰めてもその場だけは元気そうにするがすぐにまたうつむいてしまう。そんな悲しい世界があるんだ。俺は里子にそんな悲しい世界を見せたくない。俺たちが描く世界は昨日までがそうだったように みんなで楽しく過ごして暴れて遊べる
Also,
あの世界だ。
this yellow bag on the chair right here. I know this is like a pencil case sticking out, but it kind of looks like the tops of those champagne bottles where it's got like a little gold foil bit. I just want to know which kid's bringing champagne to class. Or maybe that's the teacher's bag. Teacher
も
deserves
ちろん
it.
野郎なんかに二度と貞子を泣かすような真似はさせない。それがどういう方法なのか今この場では確かに思いついていない。でもそれは絶対に思いつく。絶対だ。だから俺を信じろ。
Shion wasn't yet convinced, but even so, she walked to the window and took her seat. I mean, can she pick her seat off the floor and wipe her blood off it? Also, I'm just realizing something. I think there's actually a drawing error in this scene. So, as you can see, all the chairs are on this side of the desk. All the chairs are facing this way. And at the front of the class, which we've seen in times before and in descriptions, the teacher's desk is at the front. But here, there's a teacher's desk at the back, in front of the shoe cubbies, which I don't think was ever there before. I think someone added this, like, I don't know, as like an artistic flair, but it doesn't actually make sense from what we know of the world. Somebody rested a hand on Keiichi's shoulder. It was the principal. He'd been standing there and listening to him for a while. I also love the fact that the principal's been in at least like 4 or 5 episodes, and yet no one's ever made art of him.
一部始終は聞かせてもらいましたぞ。
私が至らぬばかりに
昨日の今日の出来事ではあるが、わしももはや猶予のならない事態だと思っておる。しかるべきところへすぐに連絡するべきであろう。
でも校長先生、児童相談所には過去にも相談したことがあって、どうせ助けてなんかくれませんよ。他力本願もいいとこです。
I love how Shion's now far away sitting in her chair, and they're just like, oh, we don't want to render her, she's far away. Shion raised her voice. The principal looked at Shion and started talking.
私は言葉の中で最も憎むべきものがあるのを知っている。それが何かわかるかね？今君が言ったどうせという言葉だ。どうせという言葉は戦いもせず負けを認める最も醜い言葉だ。その言葉を口にしたときすでに戦いには負けておるのである。
私も校長先生の意見に賛成。
Did I just find the render distance of a visual novel? I'll see if there's a good example. There's some ones where the character art, they didn't exist in previous versions. So if you're like, I don't like this character, I want them to disappear, you can just change art style and then they're gone.
生活相談所に相談するのは
But ironically, the principal never
一番最初
existed.
にするべきことなんだと思う。それでダメなら2番目の手、3番目の手を考えればいい。試しもしないうちから諦めるのは、私は見殺しにするのと何も
It's
変わ
usually
らないと
minor
思う。
characters like the other students in the class. The teacher's always there. I'm trying to think who else. Yeah, it's minor characters. There's a couple other students in the class that just, they never exist. We might see them later. We'll have to see, because we've got about an hour left of stream, and we might see them. And if we do, I will make them disappear.
無論だ。北条君はわしの可愛い教え子である。きっと助けてもらえるよう、わしにできる最善を尽くす。
児童相談所は迅速ですから、今から通報すればきっと今夜にはもう動いてくれるでしょう。それで聡子が救われればいいんだけど、もしもまた様子見なんてことになったら。
それがダメだったら次の手を考えようよ。私たちが諦めない限り絶対に聡子ちゃんを救えるんだから。
いつまでも綺麗事を言っててください。 そうしてのんびりしてるうちに、サトコは癒しようの
And
ない心の
besides
傷を
the
負うんです。
rendering distance, there's also just the RAM, so they can only have 3 characters on it. They've run out of RAM. They can't add any new characters at this point.
見殺しにしてるのはどっちなんですよ。
I can't remember which game it was, but I saw a hack for a game where it was like the game, and this was a Nintendo one, but I don't remember which. I want to say it was a Mario one of some kind, where it could only spawn a certain number of sprites on the screen at once. So what people would do would be spawn like imagine like a billboard or something that would shoot a bunch of stuff. They would spawn that, then like run with it, and enemy sprites wouldn't load in because there were the maximum number of sprites on the screen at that time. That's what we have here with characters. We can only have 3 characters on at once.
シオン、俺はさっき約束したからな。俺たちは絶対にサトコを救う。それもお前みたいに差し違えてでもなんて話じゃない。
And this was a great console.
サトコが本当に幸せになれるような最高の形で救い出してみせる。
Oh, feel free to clog up chat. It's fine. It helps me remember that Chaos. It helps me forget that Chaos doesn't just want a daddy.
見てろ、絶対だからな。前原圭一が絶対と言ったら、それは絶対なんだ。
Shion stared out the window without looking at Keiichi's face.
園崎家の方で、この後のことは確認するよ。分かったらみんなに電話するよ。
それで無事解決すれば最高だからな。
もちろん楽観はできないね。様子見になる可能性が一番高いね。そうなったらどうする？
その時はくそ。
千恵先生、職員室に行きましょうぞ。早速電話をしましょう。
Also, I love the fact that Keiichi still has this like forehead wound that's like bleeding ketchup on the floor. No one cares. Like the principal's like, "You did a good job, son. You got some blood coming out of your forehead like you should."
よく説明しないといけません。
They left the classroom. Keiichi, Ren, and Mion got together and discussed their options. Shion was looking down and crying. Rika was just vaguely looking at them, staring at a boring TV drama. Nothing will change. Child Consultation Center will put her case on hold. I've seen it so many times in previous lives. I almost hope that they'll take her into custody just this once, but I have no more coins left to gamble on a hope like that, because Mario and Yoshi took all the coins. So what I'm hearing is you can just put out whatever you want in Yoshi's mouth. In a previous life, Keiichi killed Satoko's uncle, but Shion was not there when that happened. When she is, I suppose she's the one who takes on that role. Their pathetic hopes will be crushed by tomorrow morning. The social worker will be at her house tonight. Satoko will deny that she's being abused. Her uncle will assume that she's the one who called the service, and he'll abuse her even more. She will come to school tomorrow because he doesn't want the Child Consultation Center to be suspicious of him. It's a power-up slot. We'll feel more and more hopeless when we see the dead look in Satoko's eyes. I've been living for more than 100 years, but I've never defeated this fate. The fate of her uncle's return. Uncles are just the unbeatable force of nature. I was blessed with so much luck. I thought I could defeat it this time, but in the end it all came down to the same thing. It's a waste of energy to put in any effort. It was worthless, all worthless. The more I thought about this inescapable fate, the more I pitied these people for talking endlessly about how they were going to save Satoko. Alright, that was the end of that chapter. So we got one new tip called Wet Blanket. Oh, it features Uncle Man. Happy returned to Hinamizawa to escape some trouble. He'd have to stay there for the rest of the summer, perhaps the whole year, and see what happened. For him, the house in Hinamizawa was like a rather dull hiding place. His lover Rina had suddenly disappeared. Rumors told him that she was involved with some dangerous deal. Some source even told him that she'd already been caught and killed. Everyone he knew was aware that Rina was living with him. Everyone also assumed that he knew everything about what Rina did. They were convinced that he got the money by tricking her into doing something. As a result, some dangerous men came after him. That made it difficult for him to stay in Okonomiya, so he decided, I'll just move like the 20 minutes over that way and they'll never find me, to my old house. More than anything, it pissed him off to find out that Rina was cooking up something behind his back with some other guys. Hinamizawa was about the only place he could go. He couldn't go back to the house where he used to live with his wife. It had been abandoned since he moved into Satoko's house. Besides, he didn't even have the key to his old place. But if he went to Satoko's house, she should still be there. She could clean and cook for him too. Teppy didn't know how to cook or clean, and he certainly wasn't thinking of learning. Learning. When do uncles do that? Rina had often been rebellious towards Teppy. He'd often said that he wanted to be with someone more loyal, like a pet. For Teppy, Satoko was exactly what he wanted. The Satoko is still a little kid. I can't believe I have to read this line. She can't satisfy him sexually, but he can at least make her wash his back in the bath. Satoko's dead mother used to be a pretty woman. Satoko might grow up to be a pretty lady herself in about 4 or 5 years. Teppy headed back to Hinamizawa with those indecent thoughts in his head. The house was locked, so he assumed that she was at the market for grocery shopping. Found her at the store and dragged her back home. That's what Knuckles says. However, the house was full of dust. She'd been living at her friend's house for the past year, and the house had been abandoned. Teppy exploded in anger. He told her that it was her responsibility to keep the house in order. He beat her and kicked her down to the floor. Eventually, Satoko's expression returned to what he remembered from 1982. Satoko started obeying him immediately and cleaned up the house. New place to hide with a new girl. But please don't call her a new girl. His new life was starting out pretty good. Teppy called his buddies to show off his new beginning and ended up playing mahjong with them. He bragged about his new pet and made her serve them food and drinks. He told her to walk on all fours like a real pet. She refused, but she obeyed immediately when he tried to hit her. Everyone was laughing, and they were all jealous of him. This was literally when the teacher's at the front door. He had literally just threatened to beat up the child and made her act like a dog to impress his friends. Exactly like Knuckles. Teppy felt really good about himself. However, someone arrived to interrupt this perfect life.
私、ひなみざわ文庫教諭の千恵と申します。北条聡子さんはいらっしゃいますか?
He thought someone was at his door to sell insurance or something. It was a school teacher.
なんじゃよ、踊れ。なんで踊れに里子合わせにゃならんね。
今日、北条さんが学校をお休みしましたけれど、連絡がなかったので、何かあったのかと思い、お伺いさせていただきました。
学校？
はい。聡子ちゃんはいますか？ちょっとお話ししたいことがあるのですが。
ああ、風邪なんね。そうそう。聡子は風邪で熱出しとるんですわ。
プリントとかをお渡ししたいので、ちょっとだけお話しすることはできませんか？
ドアホ。踊れ話聞いてなかったんかい。聡子は風邪じゃ。うねっとるんね。それ合わせられるかいバカ。
This was going to cause him problems, Teppy realized. Satoko was just a pet for him, and he had no intentions of sending her to school. But her teacher had shown up at his house just because she missed one day. This wasn't good. Teppy hates schools. Teppy hates teachers. And Teppy likes talking about himself in the third person because Teppy didn't finish grade 2.
そうですか。明日は登校できそうですか？
知るかいな、そんなもん。明日になって見なきゃわからんわ。このクソボケ。
そうですか。わかりました。では、さとこちゃんによろしくお伝えください。失礼します。
I mean, is Techie an uncle? He was able to get rid of the teacher, but it would create more problems if he didn't send Satoko to school tomorrow. Teppy didn't need even more trouble on his plate. That meant he couldn't beat up Satoko like he wanted to. Violence was the only way he knew how to communicate. With that out of the picture, it was very difficult for him. He wanted to beat up Satoko, but that would leave evidence on her body. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to send her to school. If she didn't go to school, that teacher would show up at his doorstep again. Shit! There goes my hobby, I guess. On top of all that, the Child Consultation Center paid a visit to his house that night. The teacher must have filed a report. That bitch, Teppy thought. Next time we'll beat her in the face so hard she'll need plastic surgery. My favorite line from Sonic Heroes is when Tails turns to the party and says this. I don't know why Tails needs to know that about circumcisions, but apparently he does. When Satoko was afraid of him, she pretended she was really sick when the social worker visited. But Sonic Adventure, not Sonic Heroes. I don't want to know what happens in Sonic Misadventures. Is that when the circumcision goes wrong? Like... It was so easy for Teppy to control her. He considered Satoko to be a convenient pet, but at the same time, he needed to be careful of the consultation center. Deadbeard is going to make a game about me. You're just going to have one button that says, it's what he wants. And when you press it, I smile, and this comes up. You can't figure it out? It's just like her, it's a Cinderella laptop. Alright, so we'll save. That was chapter 5. Then we'll continue. Got about an hour left. I'm trying to think if we've heard this song before. This might be a brand new song. Mion called me in the middle of the night. Social worker went to Satoko's house tonight after getting a call from the school. They had to talk with Satoko and her uncle. He told them that Satoko didn't go to school today because of a cold. He also claimed that he didn't call the school because he didn't have the number. He explained that he spoke with Chie-sensei politely, and that she just misunderstood his behavior, like telling her to fuck off. Satoko didn't really talk, but she never denied what her uncle was saying.
で、Satokoも一緒に虐待なんかありません。助けなんか。
Satokoは、サトシがいなくなったのは、自分に耐える力がなくて兄に甘えすぎたせいだとずっと後悔していた。 だから。
誰の助けも借りずに耐え忍ぶことが1年前の自分への罪滅ぼしになるなんて思ってるってのか？くそ、バカが。
保護司の人の所見では、少なくとも聡子に目立つ外傷は見当たらなかったから、緊急性の高い虐待を受けているようには見えなかったって。聞き取りの結果、衣食は与えられてるようだし、寝る場所もあったし。
そんなのは当たり前じゃねえか。衣食も寝る場所もなくならないと虐待とは呼ばれないってのかよ。
まあ、そういうことらしいね。そういうケースでは、そもそも面会も拒否されるらしいから、面会できた時点で相談所は緊急性がないと判断したみたい。
シオンのやつ、がっくり来てただろ。
No, Shion's already murdered him. That's really why I called you.
サトコがサトシに義理立てして助けを求めないように、シオンもサトシに義理立てしてサトコを救おうと躍起になっているとこがあるから、短期を起こそうって気はとりあえずなくなったみがっくりしてるよ。
今この場で愚痴っても仕方ねえが、サトシは本当にどこに行っちまったんだよ。妹の危機だってのにどこに行っちまったんだ。
わからないとしか言えないよ。
そうだな。すまん。サトシが帰ってきてくれればサトシが解決してくれるだろうなんて他力本願の極みだぜ。誰かが助けに来てくれるのを期待するんじゃない。助けるんだ、俺たちが。
そうだね。私たちにできる努力をしないといけないよ。
しかし園崎家もさすがだな。今日訪問したばかりの保護司の見解をその場にはもうキャッチしてるってんだからさ。児童相談所の中にスパイがいるとしか思えないな。
Sounds like he'll never guess what I did today. Tails in a slightly higher pitch voice than usual. Are we getting Tails fixed?
そこは国家機密ということで。
ってことは、その人は児童相談所の内部、もしくは相当詳しい人なんだろ。情報をくれた人は今回の件、どうするのがベストだとか、助言はくれなかったか？
熱くならずにしばらく様子を見てみようって言われちゃったよ。
Stay calm and see what happens.
なんだよそりゃ。ミオ、お前聡子がどういう状況か話したんだろ。おじに監禁されていじめられてて学校にも通わせてもらえないのが。
If Tappy had a catchphrase, it'd be this. Can I slice the cat? He seems like the kind of guy who would make cat sashimi.
ケイちゃん、これは私が言ったんじゃないからね。その人が私に言ったことをそのまま言うんだから誤解しないでね。さ、確かに聡子が今日登校しなかったのは事実だけど、でも1日だよ。1週間や1ヶ月というならともかく、1日じゃ本当に風邪の可能性も否めないよ。
でも虐待されてるんだぞ。聡子の体や心に消せない傷が残るまで放置しろってのかよ。
待ってケイちゃん、そこなんだよ。私たちは去年の聡子がどういう状況にあったかよく知ってるから危機感を持ってるけど、実際昨日今日で聡子は何の虐待も受けていない。客観的に見て現時点で聡子が虐待を受けているとはとても言えないんだよ。
Insert clever text here. If Deadbeard had a WWE catchphrase, it would be I shouldn't have go at my friend's stream.
確かに殴られて青あざがあるとかそういうのはまだないかもしれないけど、時間の問題だろう。それにリカちゃんと2人で暮らしてるのも無理に家に連れ戻したのだって虐待とは言えないのかよ。
それは昨日私たちで話した時に出た通りだよ。親権者が子供を保護すること自体は自然だからさ、客観的に見て聡子が虐待を受けているとは言えないんだよ。
虐待が起こる前に食い止めなきゃしょうがねえじゃねえかよ。
What about the 1 year where he was her legal guardian and did literally nothing but screwed off?
で、ミオンに怒鳴ることじゃねえな。すまんすまん。
I knew that wasn't Mion's opinion, but it felt like she was telling me that, and I raised my voice. I sensed her dismay. I quickly apologized.
私も去年の聡子がどういう仕打ちを受けていたかよく説明したんだけど、去年の通報も様子見で解決してるわけだしね。
去年の虐待を解決したのは4年目のたたりだろ。 別に相談所が解決したわけじゃねえけどな。
I wonder what their file is, like, abuse gone, resolved by murder, case closed.
でもとにかく、去年の件を含めても、相談所はそのくらいの危機感しか持ってないってこと。私たちと相談所の温度差が、どうも敵みたいなんだよ。
わかった。とにかく、最初の手は打ったもんな。次の手はすぐに考えようぜ。明日は全員で会議しよう。俺たちは最強の部活メンバーだぞ。今までもっと条件の悪い戦いを遊びのようにくぐってきたさ。
As we spoke, I felt less angry about the decision that the Child Consultation Center made. It was something we expected anyway. I was being emotional for a while, but Mion wasn't taking it personally. She's usually a tough person, but I know that she feels very weak when something like this happens. I have to be careful not to get too emotional with her. Our enemy was Teppy. I couldn't yell at my friends just because I was frustrated. I almost forgot sometimes, but Mion is a girl. No way yelling at her without cause wouldn't hurt her. I think I have a tendency to lash out with my emotions sometimes. I definitely need to rein in that bad habit, especially during emergencies like this. All I could do by myself was probably the same thing Shion was suggesting earlier. I knew it wouldn't make Satoko happy. The club members are fearless, but the power I possess is the smallest among all of us. That's why I needed to communicate with them. United, we'd be able to come up with a better plan. I couldn't think of a plan all by myself. 3 heads are better than 1. We would definitely figure something out.
じゃあ、私はこれからリカちゃんに電話するよ。
Whenever I get frustrated at work, I take a few seconds to think of the wise words of my friend, Samus. Oh, it was only a little murder. That's okay.
ケイちゃんはレナに電話してくれないかな。
おう、わかった。レナか。今日のあいつ、シオンと堂々やり合ってたな。それに、いいことも言ってたぜ。土壇場で骨のあるやつだよな。うん。
レナは昔からここ一番では絶対に曲げないんだよ。でも、いいことならケイちゃんも言ってたよ。
What? There's no crime planning going on here.
ちょっとかっこよかったかもだね。
All our crimes are crimes of passion. That way we get less jail time.
今更だが、ちょいと照れることを言っちまったように思うな。なんだか恥ずかしいぜ。
じゃあこれで切るね。レナもきっと連絡を待ってると思う。申し訳ないけどよろしく頼むね。
おう、リカちゃんの方にもよろしくな。誰もが辛いが、多分、リカちゃんはもっともっと辛いと思う。
Thank you for the quote, Samus's. Rika-chan was looking at the ground with a depressed look on her face all day. My chest hurt just remembering it. Must be even more painful to look at Satoko. Mion hung up the phone. I also hung up and called Rena. Picked up the phone after one ring, which surprised me.
もしもし、レナか。お前、受話器の前でずっと待ってただろう。
I think mine used to be ad quotes.
なかなか連絡がないし、みーちゃんのところにかけても話し中だしで困っ。
その話中は多分、俺と電話をしてたからだろう。ミオンは、今はリカちゃんに電話してくれてる。役割分担ってことで。だから、俺が状況を説明するぜ。
うん。相談所の人は、やっぱり様子見？
ああ、残念だが。
すっごい悔しいけど、多分そうだろうと思ってたからね。向こうの言い分はこう？まだ1日しか経っていないから、状況がつかめない。今日の欠席も本当に風邪かもしれないし、さとこちゃん自身に特に虐待の痕跡は見つけられなかった。こんなとこかな。
お前、俺んちに盗聴器つけてるだろ。そうだよ。まさにその通りだよ。まったくクソったれな話だぜ。
まだ1日しか経ってないって、本当に嫌な言い方だね。虐待が起こってしまったら、その時は手遅れだというのに。
It's only been 1 day since she's been murdered. It'll be fine.
虐待が本当に起こったら、さとこはきっと誰が見てもわかる外傷を負う。そうなったら、おじのやつ、 里子を保護司に会わせるわけがない。そうなったらで、またしても虐待の痕跡は発見できないって言って様子見だ。
それってすっごい矛盾だよね。
Apparently they need court approval to force entry, but applying for that isn't easy. While social workers may be supposed to have great legal power, in reality their hands are tied and they can't act if the family turns them away. Not the police. Not the ones who storm in, even if they have to break windows to do so. Damn it, then who does have the right to break those windows? We did, I'd smash them wide open.
連中には危機感が足りねえんだよな。このまま里子を放っておいたら、どういうことになるかが分かってないんだ。
圭一君ってちょっとすごいなって思う。
どうしてだ？
だって圭一君って転校してきたばかりなんだよ。里子ちゃんと知り合って半年も経ってないはずなのに、これだけ親身になって里子ちゃんのことを考えることができて、そして去年の里子ちゃんがどんな状況だったか見たことがないにもかかわらず、里子ちゃんがどんな辛い思いをしたか想像することができる。圭一君が普通の人だったなら、多分私たちが騒ぐのに対し、まだ1日目だろ？しばらく様子を見てみようぜって。
そんなのちょっと想像すりゃわかることじゃねえかよ。それにみんなから去年の里子がどうだったかってことは少なからず聞いてる。それから考えれば一刻の猶予もないことなんて簡単に想像がつくよ。
それはきっとすごいことだと思う。今日しーちゃんが乱暴なことを言いながら教室から出て行こうとしたとき、圭一君はそれを許さなかったよね。そして圭一君が言った言葉が深かった。
Oh, your neck hurts? Yeah. Back and neck problems when trying to sleep are probably the worst. So I sympathize with you on that one. You think Satoko would appreciate it if you saved her by committing murder?
なかなか男の子が言えることじゃないよ。それどころか。ごめんね。しーちゃんが言い出すようなことは、圭一君が言い出すんじゃないかと思ってた。
That's our Rena. She saw right through me to the core. To be honest, I was able to keep my calm because she hadn't caused that commotion. I too thought our only option was to kill him. What's there to hesitate about? Everything would be resolved if we went over and killed her uncle right away. Thought those same things myself. Then I thought of how I would actually kill him. First I'd assault him with a metal bat or something. But before that I would scope out his house and dig a hole to bury his body in ahead of time. And I imagined it. I envisioned myself actually digging the hole with a camping shovel in the woods. I repeated, "This is for Satoko, this is for Satoko," in my mind like a mantra, trying to forget the weight of the murder ahead. I relived that exhaustion and frustration. I could very clearly imagine myself standing there, soaking with sweat, covered in mosquito bites. I'm sure I'd call our uncle out or lure him out of the house and bludgeon him to death. And I repeated my mantra, "This is for Satoko, this is for Satoko," blaming her for that serious crime as I tried to avoid my own guilt over committing murder. Did Satoko ask me to do that? I'm going to blame it all on her because I committed murder? Would she appreciate that? No, she wouldn't. I wouldn't be able to tell anyone that I had killed someone. No one would appreciate my deed, and I'd have to carry that burden for the rest of my life. That pathetic future is one I couldn't have imagined in the rush I felt before carrying out the murder. I decided to kill him so that I could return us to happier times. The act of murder also meant shattering the thin path that could lead us back there.
俺はそこまで想像できたから、シオンのように口に出して言うには及ばなかっただけさ。もしそこまで想像が及ばなかったら、俺もシオンに同調して殺せ殺せって騒いでいた可能性は高いな。
そうなってたらもうどうにもならなかったね。圭一君の想像力が豊かでよかったかな。
I'm glad you can imagine, just straight up murdering people. Was that really just my imagination, though? Did I imagine killing her uncle in my mind? Imagination alone really be that vivid? I could smell the earth, taste the scattered dirt flying into my mouth, see the pebbles scattering as I shoved my shovel down, the roots cracking from its weight. The image was so real that it felt more like I'd actually done it in the
そうだな。
past.
どういうことをしたらどういう結果になるか、
Because you
よく
did.
想像するべきだよな。
うん。想像力のない大人になっちゃったら大変だからね。圭一くんは冷静ないい大人になれると思うよ。
Chaos, I'm glad to see you found your favorite quote. And Samus's. Have a good night.
あれは想像の中だったのかな。なんだかさ、そういうイフの世界が他にもあったんじゃないかって思うんだよ。
想像力が本当に豊かな人はあらゆる可能性の世界を垣間見ることができるって言うもんね。だから圭一くんが本当に悩んで未来を見据えた結果の想像ならば。
Chaos's slogan is this. I would do Popeye dates, Daddy. Please don't do a weird Edward version of me and my bot. And Deadbeard apparently. I don't even know what's going on there. There is a quote, Chaos, about you wanting to get stomped. And before Samus goes to bed, in his dreams, Deadbeard says the following. Oh, it was only a little murder. That's okay. Quote 15 is, these time changes are more complicated than the time travel. Oh, you're not a Karen, you're a groupie. I mean, I have the power to look up. Can I search my quotes? Give me 1 second. I can find the quote about Chaos wanting to get stomped. Quotes. Actually, didn't we see it? Like, literally before? What was in... We can find this. It's quote 92. Quote 92.
それは単なる想像の世界ではなく、確かにあり得た別の可能性の世界の情景なんだと思うよ。
Quote 92. Oh yeah, that's the face that Chaos wants to step on him right there.
その別の世界でも相談所への通報は様子見で終わるんだ。それでその後、聡子は一時的に学校に登校するようになるんだが、何日もしないうちに壊れてしまうんだ。
Satoko was bearing that abuse, but even something small would be enough to break her. It's like an old bowl that had a crack in it. One day that crack will eventually widen and the bowl will shatter.
俺の想像の世界では、聡子は頭を撫でたら壊れた。
I was gonna say, quote 92 steps on you.
俺の手がおじの手に見えたのかもしれない。
It's that AC/DC song. 92 steps on you. 92 steps on you.
俺の手を
And now you'll never forget.
泣きながらカーテンの束を抱いて、ニーニー、ニーニーって叫んでたよ。
ニーニーって呼び方、誰に聞いたの？
え？さあな、誰かに聞いたんだろうな。聡子がサトシを呼ぶ時の呼び方だろ。それがさ、本当に胸がかきむしられるような泣き方なんだ。 俺は慰めてやりたいのに、近寄ることもできない。
Stomp Daddy? I'm not Stomp Daddy.
俺が近寄ろうとすると、おじの姿に見えるらしくて、余計泣き叫ぶんだ。
やっぱり、ケイチ君はすごいね。それは、とても想像の中のこととは思えない。去年のさとこちゃんは、本当にそうだった。
Don't make me have to put out like an April Fool's Day thing, where I take an outline of my foot and make it a printable template, so that you can print it out, cut out my foot, and then put it on yourself so that it looks like I've stepped on you.
私やみーちゃんなんかは、よく覚えてるから想像がつくことだけど、転校してきて、まだそんなに経っていないケイチ君が、そこまで考えることができるなんて。本当にケイチ君はすごいよ。だからケイチ君は私たちと危機感がずれていないんだね。
It's giving me ideas too. I was like, wait a second. I know some people have like stickers and stuff. What if you just had printable versions of like your emotes and something? You could just have like a giant like scold finger that you could print out and like do with whatever you want. Tape it on whatever you want.
じゃあ、レナも同じなのか?
I'm not the feet man. That's why it was an April Fool's joke, because it's not real.
ケイチ君ほどはっきりとは見えないけれど、このままさとこちゃんを救えずに時間を過ごせば、きっと何日もしないうちに、さとこちゃんは壊れてしまうと思う。
Please don't tell me where you're gonna put my fingers. I don't want to know.
ケイチ君が言うような形で、ニーニーって言いながらカーテンを抱いて泣き叫ぶと思う。その時、私たちはきっと思い知る。無力であることが罪なのではない。何もしないことが罪なんだって思い知る。
Thank you. Thanks for the quote.
あれ？私の想像の中の話なのにね。本当に悲しくて涙が出てきた。
Rena can also sense how urgently we need to save Satoko. Not everybody feels that way, though. My friends all do, but they're special, and normal people like those at the Child Consultation Center see us as overreacting.
そうだよね。まだ1日しか経ってないって言われたら言い返せないもんね。風邪なんかでお薬をもらうときと同じ。2、3日様子を見てみましょうってことになるもんね。
でな、俺たちはこの危機感にもっと素直でいいと思う。一刻の猶予もない。きっとサトコを助け出そう。
私たちは一人一人では何も思いつけないけれど、みんなずっと昔、私が一人で悩んで何か悲しい思いをしたとき、今こそそれを実践するときなんだと思う。
そうだな。誰だか知らんが、レナにそれを教えたやつは立派なやつだな。
It was strange. I had this feeling ever since Rena told me this story at school. I felt like I, too, once learned a lesson after some event. But Ren and I only met recently. This is just a coincidence. Anyway, I was so lonely inside of my imagination. I thought it was stupid for them to only sit and think about how they could save Satoko, and I made a selfish decision. I eventually learned, just like Rena did. You never come up with anything good by worrying about something on your own. You have to talk to your friends. That way, they'll help you reach the best possible solution and bury the body together.
ケイチ君がしーちゃんの前に立ちふさがったとき、ケイチ君は言ったね。俺を信じろ。今は思いつかないが、きっと最善手を思いつくからって。私は信じるからね。ケイチ君はきっと最善手を思いつく。
なんだよ。俺だけに任せるなよ。いいアイデアは引き続き募集中だぜ。
そういう意味じゃないよ。私は何があっても仲間を信じるよ。絶対信じる。私たちはきっとサトコちゃんを救えるって知ったから、絶対に短絡的な手段には訴えない。
ああ、そうだな。 きっと俺たちはサトコを救い出せる。信じろ。俺も信じる。
I'll never think that I'm the only one who's trying to save her. I believe that all of
明
us feel
日
the
みんな
same
で集
way.
まって会議をしよう。実際に通報してくれた千恵先生も何か話を聞いてるかもしれないからな。俺たちは子供だから次の手が思いつかないが、大人ならいい手を知ってるかもしれない。
うん、そうだね。もうこれしか手がないなんて浅はかの極みだからね。
そうさ。手がないなんて努力しない奴の言い訳だ。手はある。絶対にあるんだ。だから俺たち自身に手がなくても、その手を探すことを決して諦めない。
うん、諦めない。
Mion praised her for it too, but Rena really is strong in a crisis. I got a little emotional as I was just talking with Mion, but Rena is different. Her fire is quiet and blue, so at first glance it seems lesser than my bright red roaring blaze. The truth is the opposite. Blue flames burn far hotter. As I spoke with Rena, I felt my useless wild energy calming down so I could rationally search for the best solution. Through that, I felt Rena's strength. Though apparently Rena felt similarly about me.
話していると、どんなめちゃくちゃなことになっても、絶対圭一君にはそういう力強さと頼もしさがあるよ。だから圭一君と話をしていると、どんどん勇気が出てくる。私たちは必ずさとこちゃんを救い出せるんだって元気になってくる。
俺はレナから冷静さ、レナは俺から元気か。なるほど。お互いにうまく補完し合っている関係だな。理想的じゃないか。
そしてみーちゃんには園崎家という強い力がありながらも打たれ弱い心がある。でもそこはレナと圭一君できっと補ってあげられると思う。
そうだな。俺たちメンバーは子として最強。
うん、そうだよ。
Talking to Rena made me feel very confident. I can share that confidence with my friends. Never feel down and miserable ever again. I give my power to the other club members, so we can fight even
リカ
harder.
ちゃんは今一番打ちのめされていて、戦う気力すらも失ってしまっている。でも私たちが戦う姿を見ていれば、きっと気力を取り戻してくれると思うよ。
そうだな。リカちゃんが戦う気力を取り戻してくれれば、ますますに俺たちは無敵だぜ。とにかく明日だ。校長も交えて次にどういう手があるのか考えようぜ。いろんな人を巻き込んで助力を得てみよう。とにかく最善手を探そう。それこそが今の俺たちにできる最善手だ。
I got off the phone with Rena. That was a pretty passionate conversation we were having. Unfortunate, the Child Consultation Center came to the conclusion that they did. But if they could still decide to wait and see, then that proved that Satoko was safe for now. We're no more than children. Worrying about it too much won't cause us to come up with any good ideas. Murder isn't a real solution, I had to admit. I thought about it once. It's easy to burn up in rage. However, I'd have to stay calm like Rena. She was still burning up very calmly, with a blue and quiet flame. I'd never seen anything like that before.
お風呂が空いたわよ。早く入りなさい。
I heard my mom speaking to me.
母さんが先に入りなよ。
I needed more time to think about what to do with Satoko. Everyone else was probably doing the
圭一も
same.
早く入りなさい。今日の入浴剤は本物の温泉でも使ってる業務用だから。
本物の温泉には入浴剤って入ってないと思うけどな。
風呂上がりの牛乳がうまい。
Dad, what are you even talking about? My dad seemed to be in a good mood. He probably finished his work. He's as scary as a bear when he has artist block. Maybe. Maybe my parents could help with an idea. They're the closest adults to me, after all. Should I talk to them? Stupid question. I had no reason not to. I have to talk to them and seek some advice.
父さんさ、実はちょっと相談があるんだけど。
なんだ。今度のお祭りの叩き売りオークションのことか？ 父さんも応援してるからな。そういえば、実行委員会の会合はいつだったっけ？父さんも呼ばれてたな。ちゃんと予定表に書いておかないとな。
あ、その件じゃないんだよ。実は、クラスメートがちょっと大変なことになってて。
So talked about Satoko. My mom joined us and listened as well. My dad is a strange artist. My mom is a normal person with common sense. I don't think they ever cover this in the core series. So his father's an artist. What they don't tell you is he's a hentai artist. Our mom's normal. She might be able to help.
それでさっきの電話は結局様子見になったっていう連絡だったんだ。
Yeah. There's some creepy scenes in some of the later after the core seasons of anime. There's some pretty questionable stuff with his dad where he's like, hey, those friends of yours, you can get them to come around more often. I'm just like, Dad, no.
それで俺たち明日からどうしようかって言って悩んでるんだよ。
沖宮の生活相談所に通報したなら、あとは任せておくのがいいんじゃないの？
でも、その子は去年にもひどくいじめられていたんだろう？
Here's your hydrate.
虐待の度合いのことはわからないが、二人で仲良く暮らしていたのを無理やり引き裂くのは、父さんは少し納得できないな。
1年間も養育を放棄してて、ひょっこり帰ってくるような人では確かにね。
児童相談所が様子見って言ってるから、じゃあ様子見でいいだろうってのは、ものすごく他力本願だと思うんだ。俺たちは聡子の仲間だから、聡子を救い出すためにもっともっと攻めていきたいんだよ。でも、それがどんな方法なのか思いつかないんだ。
圭一、闇討ちなんて考えちゃダメよ。
考えてないよ。というか、そんなこと考えてたら、親に相談なんかしないよ。
それもそうね。圭一のことだから、完全犯罪ってどんな方法がある？
We did do this last time. So our mom apparently loves murder mystery books. Hey, I would never ask my parents something like that.
圭一が正しいぞ。世の中には戦いがたくさんあるが、ルールに従って戦うのが大切だ。ルールを違反する人は誰も助けてくれないし、褒めてもくれない。ちゃんとルールにのっとって喧嘩をしなくちゃダメだ。
喧嘩にルールもへったくれもないと思うけど。で、どう？何か手があったら教えてほしいんだけど。
My parents have been alive for more than twice as long as me. They're basically ancient. They must have some experience with things like this. They must have many good ideas. At least that's what I thought. They crossed their arms and went silent.
そういう話になったら、児童相談所に通報するんだけど、通報して拉致が開かなくてその先ってのはな。
やっぱり法律とかそういうのではもうどうにもならないのかな。聡子がひどい傷を負うまで警察も相手にしてくれないのかな。
だとしたら訴えていくしかないな。
訴える？裁判？
違うぞ圭一。児童虐待は児童相談所の管轄と決まっている。そしてその児童相談所の判断に不服なら
裁判で訴える？
圭一、裁判は当事者同士の話し合いがつかないとき、その裁定を求める場でしょ？
Was this kid born in America? His first thing's lawsuits, right? We can sue people. Like that's how the world goes. We sue people, right?
その前の段階を踏まなくちゃ。
日常生活の保全と問題解決は、そしてその相談所の判断に不服なら。
沖宮の生活相談所に訴えるんだよ、俺たちが。
If we're unsatisfied with the decision they made, we can simply go and tell them that.
聡子とうちの関係はそんなのんびりしたものじゃないってことを誰よりも事情を知る。
そうだよね。相談所の人が 私たちと同じくらいにさとこちゃんの置かれている状況を理解しているとは思えないもの。もし状況の認識に誤解があるなら、私たちが説明してその誤解を解かなくちゃ。
I think this is also a brand new song.
なるほど、真正面からの正攻法ってわけか。どうでしょうね。お役所って一度決めた決定は容易に覆さないって聞きます。意味ないんじゃないですか？
意味がないかどうかは試さなくちゃわからないことだろ。やる前から諦めるなんて負け犬の発想だぞ。できる手は全て試すんだ。昨日校長も教えてくれたぜ。どうせダメだと言って諦めた時、戦う前シオンはサトコを助け出すつもりで短絡的な手段に訴えるのも辞さないとメラメラ真っ赤に燃え盛ってる。でもな、本当に熱い炎ってのは青くて静かなんだ。決して諦めるな。俺たちにできる全ての手を尽くすんだ。どうですか先生、俺間違ったことを言ってますか？
いいえ、間違ったことは言っていません。よく冷静に考えましたね。ひょっとしたら闇討ちしようなんてとんでもない話を言い出さないか、先生ちょっと不安でした。
That's what my mom was saying. Is that how people perceive me?
先生も本当は様子見をするべきであると考えていました。でも皆さんの訴えや去年の話をいろいろと思い出すうちに、人は訴えによって考えを変えることがあります。それは沖宮の相談所とて同じです。訴えれば判断が覆ることもあるかもしれない。
どう？しーちゃん、一人で膝を抱えて悩むくらいなら私たちと一緒に戦わない？
誰が膝を抱いてるんですか？私泣き寝入りなんてしませんってば。
なんだなんだ、シオンの狼狽が激しいな。ひょっとしてビンゴだな。
失礼な。いいですよ、行こうじゃないですか。それでもひよったことを言いやがったら鼻の骨をへし折ってやる。
鼻の骨はまずいが心意気は上等だぜ。シオンも一晩頭を冷やして少し炎を青くできたようだな。
Sleep? What is sleep?
私はサトコを救うために本気なだけです。とにかくそうと決まったら躊躇せずに実行しよう。行くべき場所は分かってる。実はね、おじさんも知らなかったんだけど図書館の1階に児童相談所があったんだよね。
Young Brendan showed us the location on the city guidebook. He's really prepared for this.
受付の時間は夕方5時15分まで。相手が相手だからね。あくまでも冷静にね。何をね、私に言ってるんですか？私を誰だと思ってるんですか？
Oh no. Yes. Yes, they're called suspicions.
相手を口説くのが目的なら嘘泣きだろうとこびまくりだろうと私は何だってやりますよ。
しーちゃん、その息だよ。夕方5時なら今から行けば十分間に合うね。
It's past 3 o'clock. We make it before they close if we rush there on our bikes.
お役所って時間に厳しいんだろ。時間ぴったりになったら追い出されるんじゃねえのか？
入り口は時間ぴったりに閉まるけどね。その時間に中に入れば絶対に追い出されはしない。いい？お役人と交渉するときは決して値を上げないこと。お役人は意外にタフだけど民間と違って向こうから話を打ち切れないの。絶対にこれ以上は言っても拉致が開かないなんて思って屈服しちゃダメ。しっかり全ての言い分を言い終わるまで粘るんだよ。
みーちゃん、沖宮のお役所のこと詳しいね。
私を誰だと思ってんの？市長懇親会メンバーにして市政モニター会員園崎お亮の代理だよ。お役所の人と話をすることなんてしょっちゅうだって。
なあミオ、園崎家の方からいわゆる別のルートを使って働きかけるってことはできないのか？
それはバッチャが絡むからね。ばあさんの力を借りるのは無理でしょ。未だ頭の中はダム戦争。 一億一心火の玉ですからね。今でも北条家のことを嫌ってるみたいですし。
聡子の死んだ両親がダムに反対してたって話か。俺はミオンのばあさんには会ったことねえんだが、心の狭い野郎だな。いつまでも終わったことをぐちぐち言ってんじゃねえってんだよ。
まったくです。この点ではケイちゃんと一致しましたね。
つまり園崎家としては動けないってことなんだね。
Old lady just doesn't want to.
そういうことだね。ごめんね。年寄りは頭が固いから。リカちゃんは猫可愛がりな連中が多いくせに、聡子はみんな見て見ぬふりだった。
今回の件とは別にせよ。鉄平は積極的に聡子をいじめやがるからもちろん許さねえが、その年寄り連中に畳の上で死にたかったら前原圭一をあまり怒らせるなって伝えとけ。
うん、了解。じゃあ行きませんか？時間がもったいないです。
よっしゃ、善は急ごうぜ。行こうぜ、みんな。
Doesn't our teacher have a car? Can't we just take the car?
一緒に行こう。
And Rika's been absolutely silent for like the past hour of game time. Rena spoke to Rika-chan, who'd been avoiding all conversation. She seemed to have given up all hope yesterday. It was so painful to see her so depressed.
どうせ何をやっても無駄よ。
ほら、そのどうせがいけない。無駄かどうかは試さなくちゃわからないもの。
あまたの世界で何度もあなたたちは右往左往した。それでどうにもならなかったのに、どうして今回はどうにかなると思えるの？
And now we've switched to Keiichi's point of view. Sometimes I really had no idea what she was saying. All I could tell is that she's being negative about the situation.
リカちゃんは無駄だってことをもう試してきたの？なら試そうよ。リカちゃんにとって聡子ちゃんは大切じゃないの？なら試そうよ。今ほど聡子ちゃんがリカちゃんの力を求めている時はないと思うよ。
どうせ終わる世界の座興ね。
どうしたの？早く行こうよ。リカちゃまが乗り気じゃないみたいです。本当に友達がいのない人ですね。普段あれだけ一緒にいる親友なのに、聡子のピンチに腰を上げることすらできないんですか？
あんたに聡子のことで説教される日が来るとはね。聡子をあれだけ目の敵にしてたあんたがね。
ん？あんた、おつむは大丈夫です？なんで私が聡子を目の敵にしなきゃなんないんですか？
こっちの話よ。いいわ、付き合う。どうせ家に帰ったってふて寝するだけだもの。
I love how she just like straight up admits to being like an alcoholic at the age of like 9.
なんか気に入りませんね。つうか、私のことバカにしてます？
やめなよ、しーちゃん。そしてリカちゃんもやめて。今は聡子ちゃんを救うためにみんなで力を合わせよう。みんなの力が合わさればきっと奇跡が起こせる。それには全員の力がいる。一人の力が欠けてもダメ。だからリカちゃん、あなたも力を貸して。
Everything that Rena said must have given Rika-chan motivation. I could see a slight sparkle in her eyes. Rena had said something interesting. She said we could make a miracle happen. The same thing I said when this world began. That time I said I can make a miracle happen, but I didn't say how. Rena just clearly stated that.
みんなの力を合わせれば奇跡が起きる。
うん。奇跡ってのはね、それだけのことで起こせるんだよ。
それでも起きなかったら、
本当にみんなの力を得ていない時だけ。みんなが本当に力を合わせたら起きない奇跡などない。
そうですね。竜宮さんの言う通りです。人は助け合うことで何倍にも強くなれます。一人でも多くの力が合わされば必ずどんな困難も乗り越えられます。そうだね。 かつてひなみ沢もダム湖の底に沈むという運命が決まっていた。でもそれを2000人の人々が結束して決まっていた運命を打ち破った。
運命打ち破る。
私たちひなみ沢の人間はこれほど身近に奇跡をしているはずなんだよ。みんなで力を合わせれば絶対に打ち勝てる。そこまで言われたら行くしかないと思いませんか、リカちゃま。これで奇跡が起こらなかったら、リカちゃまが欠けてみんなが揃わなかったから奇跡が起こらなかったことになります。
So it's going to be my fault. That's interesting. Miracle is something that we can make happen, but we need everyone's power to make that come true. Destiny can be defeated, fate can be escaped from. This can happen with a miracle. A miracle can happen if we unite.
昨日レナも言ったぜ。一人で悩んだって。
And now we're back to being Rika.
全員で力を合わせるんだ。相談し合うんだ。
Okay.
運命に屈するな。
I had to check, because originally he didn't actually have character art in some of the earlier games, because you always played as him, except when you got to the finale and they talk about what happened, and he just never had any character art.
そもそも運命なんてな。
So they always just like called him on a cell phone, and like he even complains like I can't be there because they haven't made character art of me yet. How can you say that without knowing how stubborn fate can be? Me, a witch trapped within fate. For some reason, his words sound very persuasive. He usually changed my fate to play the fishing game. In my previous life, Keiichi saved Rena from her devastating fate. As fragile as a thin sheet of paper. Seeing that the world I've been struggling with for 100 years is that easy to change? Keiichi made a fool out of me.
行くわ。
よし、よく言ったぜ、リカちゃん。
リカ、いいのですか?
Honey looked at me with concern. She wanted to warn me that I'll get hurt if I expect too
どうせか
much.
けるコインはこれ以上何を負けたって失うものなんかないわ。どうせ終わった世界だもの。でもそれは前の世界もそうだった。レナが学校を占拠した時、もうどうしようもないと思った。あれほどの末期的な局面からすら、その圭一が運命なんか金魚すくいの網だって言うのよ。この世界をもう諦めてるからこそ、なんだか面白そうに感じてきたわ。
どうせまた期待を裏切られます。そして辛そうになるリカを見て、僕も辛い気持ちになるのです。
大丈夫よ。もう落ち込まないわ。流せる涙は流し尽くしたもの。どうせ圭一たちがどうあがいたって、聡子は救えないって諦めてる。だからこそよ。児童相談所に乗り込もうなんて展開は初めてだしね。
圭一に起こせる奇跡なんて何もないのですよ。
Honey spoke to me in a stern voice. Miracles are called miracles because they don't happen easily. It can happen any time, it's not a miracle, just something that was meant to be.
期待なんかしてないわよ。でも、面白そうだと思うのよ。運命をあっさり破ると豪語した圭一が、どうあがくのかがね。
リカ、どうか、自分の心をこれ以上追い詰めないように気をつけてなのです。
余計なお世話よ。消えなさい。
Specifically, Honey said, don't cause your heart to have any more pain. Like, don't let your heart get crushed. I wasn't expecting anything. I was trying to enjoy my last week alive, like watching a TV show. I had to admit, I was possessed by a strange feeling. It was a little bit exhilarating. I was nervous, as if anticipating something. I felt the same way when Keiichi remembered the memories from the past in my previous life. I didn't have any coins left to make a bet, but I knew what this feeling meant. If I had a coin left in my heart, I would bet everything on this feeling.
すべての手を尽くしてダメならば、それはそれで諦めがついて気分がいいかもしれないものね。
諦める必要なんかねえぞ。絶対に聡子は救い出せるんだからな。リカちゃんはちゃんと聡子の布団を干しておけよ。聡子が近いうちに戻ってくるんだからな。その時ふかふかの布団が敷けなかったらかわいそうだぞ。
気に入ったわ、圭一。行きましょう。あんたなら地獄の閻魔の最低だって金魚すくいの網と同じにしてしまうわね。
ああ、今の俺を地獄の閻魔だって食い止められると思うなよ。絶対に覆してやる。
I stood up from my seat. Ichi is a very good speaker, so I never get bored with him. Been with him for 100 years, but he still keeps me entertained.
じゃあ先生、私たちはちょっくら行ってきます。先生も来ますか？
私は教育委員会の方へ訴えます。児童相談所も教育委員会も同じ役所ですからね。役所は案外内側から攻めるのが効果的なこともあります。一応先生も地方公務員ですからね。
確かにそうですね。役所の人は外部には冷たくても内部にはそうとは限らないこともあります。じゃあ先生には先生の角度からの攻撃をお願いして、私たちは行こうじゃない。真正面からの攻撃を。よ
し、行こうみんな。
おう！
Even knowing that everything is doomed, part of me felt like something good might happen. Tanya told me it was only a waste of time. I felt the same way until a few minutes ago. But I'd become much more interested. I had no idea what would happen. I wanted to see how Keiji was planning to defeat this destiny. I raised my fist in the air along with them and hurried to the exit. As for Satoko, she didn't come to the school again today. Happy called the school and told them she still has a fever. He said that he's going to keep her home for a few days until she gets better. Chie said she thinks Teppy knows she called the Child Consultation Center. He must be worried that Satoko will rat him out if he lets her go to school. I don't want to think about it, but it's possible that Satoko has visible bruises by now. That could also be why I won't let her go to school. Everything was happening much earlier. Satoko's situation was worsening earlier than it did in my previous lives. Yes, better. How long are they going to make us wait? They're going to make us wait until next stream, because that's where we're going to call it for tonight.